is in education.
Morning, Jordan.
Morning.
That's why Barry, I think.
Morning, Michelle.
He's like,
Okay, we'll call the special committee of the whole budget discussions meeting to order at 9 a.m. on January 21st. Jody?
Good morning. Please note special committee of the whole budget discussion meetings are streamed live and recorded on YouTube. Attendees acknowledge that in accordance with Section 20 sub 2 of the Access to Information Act and Section 4 sub C of the Protection of Privacy Act, names, addresses, and other details provided when speaking at a council meeting will be publicly shared. Should you have any questions related to the collection or disclosure of personal information, please contact the Legislative and Advisory Services Division for the Town of High River by sending an email to atip@highriver.ca. It's ATIPP@highriver.ca.
Thanks, Jody. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Cooley that council adopt the agenda for the special committee of the whole budget discussions meeting January 21st, 2026 as presented.
I will give you that motion.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. First item of business, employee compensation information.
So, because we talked about the employee compensation within an in-camera framework, the process, the mechanics for us to talk about the full budget, we have to release that information in a redacted version. Then the confidential information as it relates to the items that we talked about from comparators has been kind of redacted, the names of it, and so that we can actually talk about that information in this meeting as a part of the budget in the whole piece. So the recommendation that you see before you is to release that information for transparency purposes for the public and making sure that we're doing it in the proper mechanical way. So, no presentation on that information, but there's just going to be a revised meeting.
Okay. And you need this motion in order for us to proceed, is that correct?
That's correct, so we can release the information. If not, it stays in camera.
Okay. Gotcha. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that council authorize the release of pertinent employee compensation information from closed item 4.2 of the January 14th, 2026 Special Committee of the Whole Budget Discussions meeting to be included for consideration in the 2026 Operating Capital and Special Projects budget.
Yeah, my motion, Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. 2026 budget. Jordan?
Thank you, Mayor. Just going to share my screen. Share it again. There we go. All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Welcome to day 4 of budget deliberations. Now, after 3 days of discussion, we have come to, there's some additional recommendations that have come from Council, and we've incorporated all of this into an update. And so today is kind of showing the results of what that looks like. Impacts on tax levy, funding mixes, how it impacts reserves. So it's kind of like how it all shakes out. It is tables heavy, it's very numbers heavy on this one. I tried to make it as simple as possible. If you are confused or if you need any more clarification, please stop and we can get into the details and just to make sure you fully understand what you're looking at. Yeah, so I guess we'll get into it right now. The agenda is, we're going to start with just a recap of the labor budget that we talked about in camera. So it's been released now, we can talk about some of the details of that. Move on to the capital project list. What has, I put approved here, but I should have put recommended, not approved. Funding plan, we'll talk about grants, reserves, current year taxes, tax levy impact, including the average home estimate. We'll get into tax ratio options, just to see how that, if those change, how that would impact the taxes. We'll look at reserves as well, and yeah, we'll from there we'll figure out what we're doing. Alright, So this is a summary of the labor budget update from before. So as noted in the closed session that we just released, and the briefing note that you can find in binder 3 that I sent out last night, the proposed compensation increases due to cost of living and performance increases is $390,000 in total. As part of that employee compensation policy adopted in 2024, Council approves cost of living adjustments based on consumer price index and market comparators. So the proposed COLA amount based on the 2% is $269,000 in total, which was an increase of about $100,000 that we talked about. Okay. So far what we've already recommended, we've gone through operating budget, we've gone through the capital projects, we've said no to a lot, we've left some in. Now we're gonna talk about the, how it's going to be funded, what it's gonna look like for taxes, how it's gonna impact reserves, and any ratios on the residential, non-residential. So we'll go through that near the end there. Okay, so here is the list of all the direction that we've received during our deliberations. So it's a little small, I understand that, but it's a complete list and you can see how it impacts the budget with your decisions. The impact has been a negative $2 million to the costs. So all of the cuts on the capital, including increases, say to the library funding, this is kind of how it shakes out in the end. Okay. All right, so operating budget. So with the changes that you recommended, this is how it has impacted the operating budget. So with the increase to COLA, it's increased the operating budget as a whole, $103,000. We added a film revenue transfer to reserves. This is reflecting the fact that we are taking film reserves and keeping them, or film revenue, restricting them for art projects. So that was also included. We've got the library funding, the additional library funding for additional staff. Just a note, if you're familiar with the numbers, this is lower because we stripped out the one-time cost and left it in the projects. So this is the operating impact. Handy bus and the gift of music. So that increased the operating budget by $278. This is including utilities. Now this is the changes
Sorry,
just
Jordan, what do you mean by included utilities?
we have tax supported services and then we have our utilities business units. And so we kind of
Okay.
think of them separately.
Yep.
This includes that.
I got it, thank you.
And it's mostly COLA, which is the only difference.
Yeah, thank you.
This one excludes utilities. So this is just tax supported services. It's the same number, but we strip out the utilities portion. So you can see this is the amount of change to it's shown in negatives, but it's just a number. So it increases the operating budget. This is what will impact the levy directly. Now I just want to do a quick balance check, like, so where are we? Like, what changed? And I just wanted to give you all some assurances. The coverage ratio, tax supported services in our original budget was shown as 100% covered. With the update, it's still 100% covered. We're not using any utility transfers to cover tax supported services, so we're still good there. We have increased a little bit of reserve contribution for the film revenue, so that's gone up slightly. And then, and no change to our reserve contribution to capital reinvestment. Now, because of the change in the COLA from our original budget, there is a slight decrease in the amount available in our budget to transfer to utilities reserves. So that's kind of the overall impact there.
What's the CIRF contribution?
That is it's our main capital reserve. So when I say contribution, it means that within our operating budget, we build in a small contribution that can go to reserves for future capital use.
Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund.
Nice,
Is
is
that?
that right?
Reinvestment.
Reinvestment.
Yeah.
So-
Little words that get swapped around there. Same page, right?
Yeah,
So we're putting 456,000 in there.
exactly.
So where the 466 comes from is from the debt repayment we had on 498 and CB lands. So those debts are now repaid. The 466,000 was the amount there. So this is a conversation that council will have to have as to how you want to utilize that 466. Now, I'm 100% with what your plan is. I've always believed that that money is already being paid. It should go back into reserves to fund future capital infrastructure projects. So that's,
But we haven't made that decision yet.
we have not.
Okay.
Council has that choice to put it back, but then you've got to go figure out how you're doing everything else.
Yeah, we'll talk about the reserve plan, like what reserves will look like at the bottom end of this, and this is gonna be a part of that. You'll have an opportunity to speak on it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so that's the impact to operating budget. Now we're gonna move on to the capital side of things. So as of, from yesterday, we have council has recommended 21 projects to move forward and deferred or removed 8 projects. So of that, 2.1 million has been reduced as a result of that. And, but we have to find ways to fund the 4.2 million for this year, which I'll show. Here is the updated capital, this is the proposed list after all the cuts have been made. So this is the final list. And so there's that number again. Okay. Alright, so this is a little complicated, I'll warn you. So, but once I explain it, you'll see exactly how this works. I think it's pretty good. Actually, the one after this one. So the funding guidelines, what we did is,
Sorry.
we took the baseline operating budget, which already included a tax increase, which I'll show how much that would have been. And then we added the capital items, and then we have to figure out a way to fund them. So generally, what we try to do is fund them from grants first, then we look at reserves, and then anything left over, we would have to apply taxes to in order to fund them. However, some projects have been recommended from administration to be funded just from current taxes. So not all of them apply that waterfall rule, but you'll see exactly how we figured that. Okay. I made a script for this one because I wanted to make sure I said this exactly right. Alright, so we are now at the funding summary. This is where the budget decisions connect directly to our reserves. The funding plan we are showing here is a grant-heavy option. We modeled more than one approach for funding capital projects. The other option is a reserve-heavy process that more mirrors the original plan, where we use more reserves for aquatics. This version uses more grants so we can protect our reserve balance. There is one key point that drove this choice, was that grant balances do expire. It's a current year grant plus 5 years, so it's about a 6-year timeline. So anything older than that falls off, we may lose the ability to use it. So based on that, we have been able to draw it down, based on what we have been able to draw down in the past, we think a maximum grant balance of about 5.4 million is appropriate and manageable. So this funding summary using more grants in this option to keep reserves stronger while still using grant funding before it expires. When we get to the reserve continuity slides, we'll show you what that means for the ending reserve balances for under both options, just so you can see kind of what our thinking on that was. We can also show you the reserve heavy option later. Okay, so this is the total recommended capital, this top line here, so this is the total project listing. If we apply grants, it draws it down and a little bit of reserves. We have $413,000 left over that is showing as tax funded. Those 413 are made up by these projects that are gonna be, that under this model is funded by taxes. So this is driving some tax levy increase. So we can come back to this and look at like if this is still appropriate if we need to.
When you're looking at the 2.6 less reserves, 2.3 of that is coming directly out of the utility reserve for the center, or the Crescent Ave utilities.
Is that right? We'll just double check. It's on a spreadsheet now.
Can I also ask a question while they're looking? So when we talk about the grants, these are grants we still have to get. Like, they're obviously, am I wrong? Am I not misunderstanding what this grant? We have them already.
So it's both the local government fiscal framework, as well as the Canada Community Building Fund as well, that's the gas tax,
Okay.
the former gas tax money. So, you know, the LGFF we've used the last 2 years to, towards the aquatics, as well as the MSI back pay as well, which MSI saw an increase because of reconciliation of about $1 million, which then increased LGFF by $1 million as well. So at the end of the day, we had a little bit extra left over. So it's that balancing act between, do we use up all the LGFF towards the aquatics and build back our reserves by returning another $1 million to reserves? Or do we use our reserves for the aquatics and use LGFF to fund some of this capital stuff? So it's like a shell.
Don't say shell game.
It's a shell game, right? Of all these buckets of money, which ones to use, right?
No, that's not a good term to use. It's decisions.
It's a decision, yeah, right? And so at the end of the day, that's why we're kind of relying on the grant heavy side of things, because, you know, our CCBF is at about 6 million currently, right? And so we've got to start drawing that down, and LGFF will start getting back into the regular track next year with $2.1 million contribution coming in for 2027, so.
Appreciate it, I just needed to understand
Yeah.
where those grants were.
So underlying that, that's our allocation. We
Yeah.
still have to apply for projects to get the project specifically approved by the province.
Right.
But that's usually just a paperwork, and as long as it meets the criteria, it's usually kind of a rubber stamp of approval.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you.
So it is, just over 2.3 million, there's some other small water projects that would also come out of.
So that utility
I'm not
reserve
hearing
is separate from,
what she said.
yeah, so the 2.3 million from the 2.6 number, 2.3 of that is directly out of the utility reserve account that's dedicated for exactly utility infrastructure, upgrades, repairs, rebuilds. So that's separate from the CRIF, or CURF, or SURF. Separate from the capital projects. So you're left with about 300,000 coming out of reserves.
Yeah, reserve, yeah.
That's a good point, because we're not taking 2.6 and just out of reserves and just spending it on whatever.
Correct.
It's dedicated to a purpose that we had reserves for in the Crescent main replacements.
Correct.
It's clear, yeah, it's very good to have that clear understanding.
We have a spreadsheet we can call up and show exactly how that breaks down later on.
Any more questions before we change slides?
Alright, getting into tax impacts. Now, I made 2 full slides of caveats for this one, because we're using a tax model here. It's So we built this tax model up to help make budget decisions into something tangible, so we can actually use, like, how do your decisions translate to tax? But there's a trade-off to it, because it's built on assumptions. So until our final assessment is done and levies are set, these numbers will change. So these are not static, they're not promises, because they're based on estimated changes to our assessment base. If you go back to our tax equation, assessment is a key component of our levy and tax rate equation. And because we have an in-house assessor, we're able to get these updated assessments, so we're building our tax model on those, but these aren't final. So, but I still think that it is useful for helping make decisions, but I just wanna make sure that it's on record that these aren't promises as to how it'll actually look on the final levy or tax bill, I guess. Okay, so a few assumptions on the tax model. So we're basing the 2024 assessment number, like on a per home basis, on the average home. That was $454,000. And the updated average home at High River estimated is $502,000. So that change from average to average is driving the increase in taxes primarily. But these are not, like, if you plug my home in here, the outcome would be completely different. If we plug the mayor's home in here, it'd be completely different. These are average to average. So just so we're really clear on how that is driving the tax model. Okay, so with that said, this is the outcome of deliberations and how it impacts the tax rate. Our original operating budget that we presented on day 2 would have required 100 or 1.5 increase in taxes to cover 100% of our coverage, to get to 100% coverage rate. With the changes per deliberations to the operating budget, that bumps the tax rate up to 3%. And with the additional capital projects that require operating funding, or sorry, tax supported funding for the $413,000, that bumps the tax rate estimated up to about 5.4%.
So we increased the taxes?
Yes. So it'd be, by increase, we mean it's a percentage on the tax rate. So
Yeah.
the current tax rate times 1.5,
Okay, can you
0.54.
guide me through how we got from 3 to 5.4% with only a $413,000 increase?
Sir.
Because in my head, $1.1 million equals 1% tax increase, so help me out here.
The primary increase to taxes is based on the assessment base growth. That's pulling up the levy. And then once we start with no change in tax rate, with 0 change in tax rate, the assessment base grows, and then that creates a new foundation for our levy. From there, we add 1%, it's a marginal increase. So any additional cost will have a disproportionate amount of increase to the tax rate compared to that initial assessment float.
Got it-ish.
There's a word I'm not supposed to use. When we have, I could pull up a spreadsheet to explain it.
No, I get it, because it's when you start bringing that assessment piece into it and how that funds things, that's where, so does the 5.4% include that assessment?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's based on an average of 502,000 per house.
This is a more accurate number increase. It's taken into in my future slides, I'm using those homes to show how it would impact an individual resident. So in this case, it's not based on an average home, it's based on the entire assessment base.
Because essentially the difference is 55,000, right? Because we're at 4 per household. And that's the variance that's adding that, right? Because if it was 450, now it's 502,
Yeah.
it's 52, I guess.
Yes, but over the entire town.
Right, yes.
Including non-res. So,
I think I get it. It's-
it is the increase in value that's
Yes.
driving most of the
Right.
opportunity for a tax increase without changing the tax rate, yeah.
Actually, assessments never increase taxes, they just don't. It's that piston effect between the levy and the assessment. So
Yes.
the assessment
Yes.
itself, that's a misnomer, the assessment does not increase taxes. Just doesn't,
Right,
the levy does.
the levy does, yeah. If you had no, there's a lot of ways you could explain it, yeah, that's one way. The levy really drives these numbers, for sure.
So say to lower this tax rate by 1%, we would be trying to get rid of 100,000,
About 200,000
200,000 in projects or
projects. or-
operating.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a couple ways to do that. One, taking a look at the projects that aren't funded under reserves or grant. Council can make the cognizant choice to say, we want to fund that out of reserves. That's an option. We're not recommending that because we want to start building up reserves. You can delete a project. You can also adjust your operating side of things by adjusting the COLA, adjusting some of the operational decisions that you made, including additional funding for the library, or handy bus, or gift of music, or take a look at other service level cuts that people would not necessarily notice from that perspective. So, those are certainly options that we can go through. And we have some options potentially from that perspective, and we do have the COLA built out from 1.3 to 2 on a 0.1% increase all the way through, so that council can make that informed decision. That's why we wanted to release that information too, so that it's a transparent conversation.
So there is one option to keep in mind. We've got $466,000 going into SURF. You could use that 466 to fund your library accessibility, because that is a capital infrastructure replacement.
Well, library accessibility is funded from CCBF. It's grant funded.
So it's already reserved.
So it's already coming out of the grant fund. So we funded that.
That one is.
That one is. So if you take a look, you go back to the ones that are not funded. From that, so that's a list that's not funded from grant funds. That's from the current year taxation, so the Transportation Master Plan website. The one-time funding for the library of 28,000 for that needs assessment, as well as the public education, the overhead doors, the pre-design, and the sports fields. Those are the projects that are not funded from a grant or from reserve currently. And council can make a conscious effort to fund one or all of them from reserve if they so choose. Maybe the website is probably, in the master plan, probably not, but they're more operational expenses. The other piece is to go into the operational side and say, what's COLA, let's reduce COLA, for example, instead of 2, let's go 1.8, what's that impact? Instead of funding the library for both their asks, fund one or the other. So those types of things, and then going deeper into service levels within the operational budget, and finding some cost savings from that perspective through every single line item, kind of a nickel and dime approach.
I've got kind of 8 pages of notes on those.
So there's that kind of approach. So there's multiple ways to achieve this. If you want to reduce from 5.4 down to And you know, what helps us is give us a target, right? If there's a tax rate target that you're looking at, that helps us build backwards then. And then we can kind of support that through a backwards kind of review.
What would it take for us to go down to 2.5%? If that was our target?
One, we'd have to, you'd be taking a look at those deliberations in column 2, right? The second one in from the operating budget when we're at 1.5. So that 1.5, you remember, included 1.3 COLA, no library stuff, no library increases, no handy bus. And then you'd have to be doing a significant cut within that second column, plus likely zeroing out that 413 or funding from elsewhere to get to a 2.5 or a 2. And that's, and like I said, there's multiple different approaches too, because we can dive into, you know, if council gives us a target, we can then dive into the operating side and say, let's take a look at all the levels of service, and does $10,000 impact the level of service dramatically here or not? It doesn't, then we can start going from that perspective with our budget orders.
To get to 2.5.
$32 a month is a chunk for some people.
I think 2.5 is not realistic. You know, I see more 3.54 would be okay. Or 5.4 is a little more than I had anticipated or hoped for.
So go back to the capital list. So, okay, so when I'm looking at this, so I'm looking at the 466 number that's going into capital reserves and how we can use that to shave some of this increase off and keep the tax rate getting back down into where we could. When I'm looking at capital stuff, master plan, no. Website, no. Library funding, no. Large ice overhead door, absolutely. Sprung overhead door, absolutely. And the sport field upgrades, absolutely.
Like using reserves.
Using,
4 points.
that's $150,000 out of that 466 that we could use. That means you're still putting 310,000 into funding future capital.
Now,
So really what you're saying is the pre-design?
Is the pre-design, now you could slide the pre-design in there as well, because
But yeah, that one stood out to me because like, when are we really gonna build that anyway? Like, it's not the next, I don't see it happening in the next 24 to 36 months.
no, but what it's going to do is tell us whether that piece of land will work, yes or no. And do we save it, or do we keep that piece of land, or do we sell it and move on and find something
Well,
else?
I get it. I think I might be simplistic, but I think we've got a smart enough team that can take the plot of land and use a CAD system and go, if we have the building this big, or that they know what they want, they know what they need. Sorry if I don't mean to diminish the use of a consultant, but at a pre-stage, I think we can kind of figure out if the land works or not. Do we really need a consultant to tell us?
So you're saying gate the building pre-design altogether?
Gate it.
Down the road.
To me, unless my understanding of what that really means is so limited, unless Chris and the group can convince me that that is something that's absolutely necessary. Because to me, simply, it's a plot of land, it's a piece of graph paper, we need 10,000 square feet for this, 5,000 for that, it has to have this kind of accessibility, and it's a little bit of a drawing game to kind of give you a concept. Yes, there might be something that comes after it, but do we really need to spend 60 right now? And I mean, we're talking about such a little piece of money, and let me preface that, because we are being streamed. $60,000 is a lot of money. In terms of our overall budget, it's a really small piece. So not to diminish the 60, but in the same breath, I'm talking about removing the 60 so we don't spend it, so.
You know, I'll speak a little bit to it and Riley jump in where I'm wrong. I think when we talk about the viability of the site, we can certainly do some work in-house. And when we acquired this property, we did some calculations on what the preferred square footages everybody would like to see. And they were a little bit, I'll be honest, they were a little bit rich because it was kind of using the Okotoks operations yard as a model and kind of mimicking that. And I think that has to be dove into. This would be diving into that detail. What is the actual needs assessment aspect of things? We can do the blocks, the cubes, you know, where our salt storage is going to be, where's our aggregate storage going to be, where's equipment storage, where's the parks building, where's the mechanic shop. We can work on that and certainly have a configuration layout as it relates to the Northeast ASP as well, and how that road, whatever the road location is selected, if it's dividing in or if it's closer to the Highway 2, you know, that 16 acres that's there, 16.4, is like the bare minimum size, and to have a functional yard progression, and the shape is appropriate too, because it's a long rectangular piece that gives us options.
So
right?
16 acres is the optimal size that you're looking for, and we're already gonna lose probably an acre for a road.
Yeah,
So we're.
well, 16 acres based upon their the plunking Okotoks' shop
Yeah.
system on there, which I think is too large for what we would want to see happen, right? And so that's the thing. So we can certainly do the cubes.
Because their shop adequately supports 35,000 people
Yes.
right now.
Yeah.
We're a ways
Yes.
off.
Yeah.
I don't know if we are, because you gotta consider the fact that we've got storage yards down south that we're trying to be more efficient, so 16 acres is probably not far off, right?
Yeah,
From even what we need now.
Yeah, 16 acres based upon the future needs assessment that was done in 2015-ish, I think.
Yeah,
The 16 acres was what was the preferred size,
yeah,
right? We were looking for 20 plus, to just give us flexibility.
yeah.
But there's just nothing in town, right, that was readily available. We looked at half a dozen or so properties. And this one just landed in our lap because the one we were looking at was actually 13 acres, which we thought we could make work for the next, 40 or so years.
Yeah.
From that perspective. And that's the thing that we're looking at, is not necessarily what serves us today, because we're working on a 4.5 acre chunk right now. Right?
Understood.
Right, like, we've got everything in there, that it's cozy, right? There's not a lot of room in the shop for everybody to have a coffee break well, or, facilities from that perspective, but it works, it's doing okay, but we do have to make investments in that building if we're gonna keep it for 10 or 20 years, like a new roof, which was in the capital plan for next year or the year after, potentially, depending what happens here, for $600,000 to replace that roof. So those types of things we have to make as we push this down the road, and that's okay, right? Because that's a decision that we can make, because at the end of the day, you're talking about a public works yard that's probably in the scope of $15 million in its entirety to build, especially salt containment.
15, 25?
Yeah. Salt containment, and we don't do a lot of salt storage, but when we get more and more salt storage, we're likely to have to build something on our existing site for salt storage and containment as well, because you don't have that.
The south yard, how much is it? Acreage, sorry.
5 acres.
5 acres, so really we're operating out of
10.
10.
Yeah.
So,
The other option, there's not a lot of options of big tracts of land for 20 acres unless unless potentially you take a look at taking back the old airstrip piece up by the ag lands, and rehousing that, right? And we looked at that.
Or purchasing
new land somewhere else.
Yeah.
How fast can you model?
When I'm by myself pretty fast, when people are looking over my shoulder. But I can give her a go.
so, could someone explain to me again why it's essential for us to do the transportation master plan this year?
Because it feeds into our offsite levies that need to be updated. And so for development to pay their fair share, it needs to be updated so that we can facilitate, transportation master plan needs to be updated so we can facilitate updating our offsite levies to make sure that development is paying their fair share.
Just to add to that, Chris, the last one was done in 2011. I did check before today. And it's also important to keep in mind that there are It hasn't been updated since we annexed. So there are lands, for example, Red Tail, that's not included in the offsite levies. We need to work towards including them in the offsite levy bylaw to make that process as smooth as possible, as well as existing areas to make sure they're paying what they should be paying in terms of offsite levies. So this is a big part of getting to that. It also helps with capital planning as well. It helps us when we're looking at roads, when we have concerns in terms of volumes and whatnot, because it does put a traffic grid on the entire town, so we know what kind of volumes we're looking at if we're doing an upgrade project or something along those lines too. So it does help on both ends, but right now we are so far behind on offsite levies in terms of that bylaw. It is important.
I mean, when you say we're behind on off-site levies, you mean we're not charging them?
Well, we're not, the numbers are out of date. It's been, now I didn't look up that number, but it's probably, do you remember when we did the last one?
Yeah,
5 years or so?
It was 2021, I think we adopted the
2021?
bylaw, yeah.
So the numbers are out of date. Again, we've added annexed area that aren't properly included in that offsite levy bylaw, or they're not included at all. So if Red Tail comes in, what do we charge them? There'll have to be negotiation, and we're dependent on the developer coming and playing with us at the table. And the numbers, again, they're out of date. Costs have gone up. Our costs have gone up. Projects are more expensive. We want to make sure we're recovering the proper amount and that development is paying for growth.
So what's included in the 75 grand?
So that would be the modeling, all the transportation modeling that goes on behind the scenes to figure out volumes, road sizes, things like that.
That in-house or out-house?
Out. We don't have the capabilities or the software to do that. It's a very specialized task. Anytime you're doing modeling like that, the water model, we're currently in the process of wrapping up. The sewer model, we're currently wrapping up because council funded that for 2025. And transportation, it's all done externally because we don't have the software or the expertise, nor do we want, given how infrequent we use it, nor do we want it in-house.
Agreed.
So it includes all the modeling. It'll include analysis in terms of the growth. It'll include forecasting future traffic volumes. What we generally do is we'll take the ASPs, we'll put the road networks of the ASPs into the model, and we will run it. Determine road classification, road sizing. Then we know what the road projects are. Then we generate a list of projects that are a result of growth, put a price to them, and then when we update the offsite levy bylaw, which is expected or planned for 2027, pending council approving a budget for that, that would all roll into that analysis, that financial analysis, in terms of generating the rates. When we have generated rates in the offsite levy bylaw historically, a number of the project costs have been just inflated with inflation. So we apply an inflation value, rather than going back to the root numbers in terms of there's this much pipe, there's this much road, here's a appropriate unit cost. Legislation has changed to make it much easier to appeal offsite levies. So basically, the moment we touch our offsite levy bylaw, it is open to appeal. And the way we have applied number for that growth rate or that inflation rate is subject to appeal, and it wouldn't pass. And so we can't adjust the offsite levy bylaw in its current form because that opens us up to appeal. It was done before they changed the legislation, so it can't be appealed. But the moment we open up, it's open to appeal, so we need to have a solid foundation for our numbers and generating those new project costs. And so that means basically starting from scratch on a lot of this, which comes from our master plans.
I appreciate, yeah, I know, trying to put the, I guess my one concern is, so we're sitting at this table next October and we're looking at a $600,000 roof build and we don't have the information from this assessment to kind of guide us, saying, okay, we've got the appropriate land, But when we look at building out, we're looking at 10 years, we're looking at 2 years, so we can make an informed decision on that $600,000 roof. I don't know if we lose a little bit of that information in helping us make future decisions, because this is gonna be a big ticket item as we move forward, whether we piecemeal it or do it all at once. I just wonder if that's key information that's going to help us make some decisions on what is obviously a piece of property and facilities that we're behind the ball on and are aging out and not serving our needs right now.
I think some of it is what's council's appetite for capital costs associated with a public works suit. Knowing that the existing building is going to need work in short order. We know the roof is end of life. We know the sprung is, we're already seeing costs, life cycle costs on it. We're going to see more as time goes on. So I guess what's the appetite on spending? Because if council understands that this is going to roll into detailed design and construction of some sort, whether it's phased or not. So for example, maybe the salt shed goes up first. At some point, environment is going to tell us to do that. Right now, we don't know where on the site we would put it. Without this, we don't know where.
Why
Now,
do we
and
need
I
somebody
think
to tell us where to put the salt? And in the detailed design, wouldn't that come out anyway? Sorry to jump in, rather, I just don't understand.
I guess it's again, what's the appetite for spending and do we phase it? So if we are in a position where we're okay with spending some, but we don't want to do the whole meal deal and we need to phase it, where do the different pieces go? We don't want to spend detailed design on a building if what we're building is a salt shed.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, our appetite for a spend.
So-
But simply, we need a consultant to tell us where we want to put this building, that building, or the salt, really? Maybe I'm not that bright. When-
Michael.
But it's
You know,
really no.
when we built the warehouse at the distillery, I didn't have somebody come and give me a pre-assessment and tell me what I needed. I told them what I needed and what I wanted. This is what it is. This is what I require. This is the square footage I need for my whiskey storage. This is what I need square footage for case goods storage. This is what I need for some admin space. This is what I need for, and this is the square footage I have. This is kind of the ratios I want to part and parcel it out to. So, and that already got me with an engineer and an architect, right? So this, I'm sorry I'm caught up on this pre-stuff. It's like, I'm gonna pay somebody to tell me something that I maybe already know, and I apologize if I'm way off base, but.
Some of it we would know, some of it we wouldn't. It's I don't know, it's like when you have an architect, you think you do a basement reno or you design your extra washroom in the basement and you think, this is great. And then you walk in there and you realize the door doesn't quite open all the way or something like that. And so having a professional be able to say, hey, your driving aisles need this. No, your salt shed, you've given yourself too small of a footprint. Or do you really need that many bays? It's someone with experience in terms of this kind of industrial design saying this is the space or these are the templates that go in these spaces. Because if we go in with our staff, it's not going to be right. The operators have a good idea of what they do. They know what they work with now. But what is best practice? Like if we go in there, again, back to driving aisles, because as an engineer I deal a lot with that in terms of parking and roads and stuff like that. And we tighten it up a little bit, and now all of a sudden for the next 40 years we're stuck with a loader that's got to make a 3-point turn rather than being able to just drive straight into a salt pile.
Sure.
So having someone who knows that stuff and knows the templates and can put those templates on the design is important. But I think, again, it goes back to council's appetite to spend money, because it does have a shelf life. If we're not spending money in the next 5 years, why are we doing this?
But I'm of the thought that we're still trying to determine if that's the right piece of land or not. If it's appropriate. So if we're gonna spend this to me what you're talking about is more detail. That's more of what I'm hearing. If we're just trying to predetermine if that piece of land works for what we need, that's where I'm struggling with, do we need a consultant to tell us that? And I appreciate everything you just said, Riley, about you know, your roadways and your turning radiuses, and if you need, you know, 5,000 square feet versus 4,500 square feet for a salt shed, you know, that stuff aside, I was hearing that we're still not quite certain if that's the right plot of land. And there's some things pre that, if we don't know where this ASP is exactly gonna go, where that road is gonna lay out and how that's gonna affect that piece of land. So if we're gonna put money into a piece of land that we think is something right now, the ASP goes into place, that changes that piece of land, plus the ownership group that's there, somebody might put their hand up and go, I don't want the ops center right next to my piece of land that I'm doing this with. There's that whole side of the conversation that can still happen. So that's why I'm struggling with an investment. I don't think it's not important. I think it's critically important. We've got aging infrastructure. We need to make it, I just, you know, and again, it's 60 grand. It's not a lot of money, but it's just the planning to get to the point.
It
Yeah.
becomes significant.
Yeah, so, you know, what I can say about it too is that one reason why we acquired that property was when we took a look at the viability of the site, it met the parameters of the information that we had at the time that, hey, this will work. It's square, it's rectangular, it's got straight edges, it's not a pie shape or a funky shape that the other piece of property that we were looking at. It was 16 acres. You know, when we applied the template from other communities over top of it, we could, you know, that template could fit on that. And so it was, you know, so one, we got a good deal on it. It landed in our laps, and at that point we had been hitting stonewall after stonewall. Every property we looked at said, no, it's not for sale, it's not for sale, it's not for sale. And we were running out of options besides taking a look at the, you know, the drive-in lands is our last chunk, or trying to acquire another bigger chunk from a new developer in the northwest or in the northeast, which then would have been a much higher price tag. Because we were looking in the $2 million range originally, and we got this for like 800.
No,
So,
I'm not questioning the spend. I know we were securing it for that reason.
Yeah.
But to Jamie's point that we've got, you know, other areas we're trying to consolidate into one. When we bought it, it was a good thing. We can sell it.
Yeah.
But is it for the long term, the 30, the 40, the 50 year, is it the right piece of property that we can go forward with?
Yeah.
So I'm just backing it up a bit before we start to really get into the
Yeah,
meat and potatoes.
and I think, you know, I think this is a project that could, I'll be honest, could be deferred, right? But you need to know that if we do defer it, the longer we defer it for, then we do have to make some investments in the existing yard. And, you know, the existing yard, not so much the existing yard, the existing building. And so that's something that's on the horizon, and then whatever the investment we make will spell out how long we stay there too, because at the end of the day, it's probably a demo site, right? Like, you know, that site is probably not going to be used for that type of purpose once we leave there, and we have to think about what the future of that site's going to look like. Is it going to be commercial development? Is it going to be park development? Is it going to be something else? But that building does come down, so making investments, if we're gonna tear it down in 3 years, what we didn't want to see happen is that we're gonna tear it down in 3 years and also we make an investment of $600,000 on the roof and we're tearing it down in 3 years, right? Because at the end of the day, you're putting a 20-year roof on it. And so that's kind of where the situation that we're in. So we just want to have this conversation, because it's a good conversation to have about timing of all these projects, because there's, you know, as you look at the subsequent years, because we haven't really dove into the subsequent years, there's a list of projects that is kind of cascading through. And, you know, we've talked about it a lot in-house here, is one, you have to have your financial capacity to do the projects, and you have to have your human resource capacity to do the projects, right? And so, while you may, you know, in an ideal world, when you talk about asset management, you may want, the asset management plan may say you have to spend $20 million a year to keep pace. You just, one, don't have financial assets or the human capacity to actually do that. Or the community desire to see the entire town ripped up every year for the next 20 years, right? And so those are the balancing acts. So, you know, when we talk about this project, I think this is one that we can defer, right? It's an easy one to defer, because it is just it's a strategy, it's a plan, it's pre-designed, it's make the next step to take the site that's viable to, you know, let's start placing things on the site, feed it into the ASP to say, hey, is that road location really going to cause us problems, or is there a better road location from that perspective too? So, you know, those are the types of things that we're looking at as we move this forward, and whether or not another piece of property comes up, because at the end of the day, we've been watching the realtor market, there's not 20-acre chunks that are popping up in town. And we're trying to keep it in town. Like, there's lots of 20-acre chunks outside of town, but that's not what our intent is.
Just my last comment on this, I guess my kind of concern is, number one, we talk about the you talked about the operators today and their input, they're looking at today. They aren't looking at the future and what those future needs are, and I think that's the benefit that these people, that this plan would bring to the table. My other concern is that, and again, worst case scenario, I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but we have a catastrophic failure at one of those buildings, the sprung structure collapses or whatever, and then we are scrambling without an answer for how we proceed at this new site. I just think it's kind of the, you know, putting us behind and not preparing for something that we see as imminent for what, when you look at things that we spend money on, it's $60,000 is not a drop in the bucket, but it's,
A pre-design too will kind of give us where the blocks will be placed, right? And so if we do have a catastrophic failure, and instead of reinvesting and building a new sprung structure on that site, because it fails, then, you know, then all of a sudden we may be building this new structure in a block that's designated for
in an
that
appropriate
new site,
spot.
right? In an appropriate spot. So that gives us that answer. But are we in a rush? We're not in a rush, right? And I think that's, and we can certainly take a look at refining that number or looking at deferring it, because at the end of the day, that pre-design, once we get more LGFF into our coffers too, that pre-design does qualify for LGFF.
That was gonna be my next question. How much of the 413,000 could be done with grants or reserves? And what effect is that gonna have on the reserves?
Grants, certainly the grants wouldn't cover, either of the grants wouldn't cover the transportation master plan or the new website.
Okay.
So that would have to come from, you know, council would have to make a conscious effort to take that from capital reserve.
You could fund the whole thing out of that 466 we're putting in. You could take,
Yeah,
put
sure.
all, you could do the whole thing. On this pre-design thing, we've got 2 other studies that I think need to be done before we do the pre-design for that area. We've got the 112th ASP that's gonna define where the road is. We're gonna need that before we do pre-design,
Yes.
in my mind. And we got this transportation master plan that will also include that. If we leave the transportation master plan in place, that will also be part of this, because again, off-site levies, everything else, and what,
I don't think you need the TMP, but you definitely do need the ASP.
you need the ASP, right? So until that 112 ASP is done, I think the pre-design is premature. I think you defer that to next year.
What about the ASP was supposed to be, we're trying to tie it up this year.
June-ish.
This year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we would have
on
to
your
wait until-
buildings now, like the one you said, like the roof was need to be replaced. Now you're talking like next year that would have to be, or we've got 3 years on this thing? Because you're not gonna spend $500,000 to fix something that's coming down.
That's
And
the
it-
concern, at least. I mean, we're patching it now. It's already, the request was put forth by staff, I think last year originally. So the direction was patch it. And so they are, I mean, we're into life now. How many more years we can squeak out of it is kind of up for debate, but.
We also have other issues on that building that we've had in the last couple of years, that the new
doors.
doors, but that's on the sprung structure. We're talking
The
washrooms. We have actually a temporary building on the back. We have no wash bay,
Yeah, the wash.
No shower room.
no shower rooms, nothing.
Decontamination.
So it's not just a roof.
I'm with you, but how fast are we going to take the money and pull the trigger on a full new build of replacing that building and going to?
I agree.
Right, so personally, I don't have a problem with deferring the pre-design for another year till we get the ASP done, and honestly, TMP. That's where I'm which would free up taking out the funding, the other stuff, 150 for the other 3 projects. You'd be down to, you could reduce that to 210.
What other 3 projects?
The large ice overhead door, the sprung overhead door, and the sport field.
And doing what with it, sorry?
Funding through reserve.
Oh, I know it's a small amount, the library funding, but we are putting 400,000 into the front of it. We are adding 100,000 to their yearly operational costs. They came with a wish list of everything they wanted, I'm sure not expecting everything, and we gave it to them. This is, and I don't see it as a need, but maybe a want. I think maybe we could pull that as well.
It's an accessibility
The
issue.
accessibility one?
No,
No.
the one-time funding.
Okay.
No, I think the accessibility and the operating costs, I'm okay with, but the.
One-time 28.
Yeah, 28. I know it's a small amount, but
What's that for? Again?
The 28,000 is for them to conduct a needs assessment to make sure they're delivering the services that the community wants,
And marketing.
as well as improving the public outreach so the community knows what services they actually provide.
and free cards.
And, well, free cards was part of the operating
Oh.
expense, yeah.
Do we know what the split on that 28 was? I just don't recall.
18,000 for the needs assessment and 10,000 for the public outreach.
For the what?
The public
Okay.
outreach and marketing?
Could we pull the needs assessment but leave the 10?
Yeah, it's a menu of options, right?
Because I know I only say that because Ruth Ann was at a meeting that I was at last night, and she goes, if we had to pick or choose, get rid of the transportation, but keep the rest. So, just wondering, because that marketing piece,
The
I know there are 2, yeah, the 400,
Yeah, I
that
think-
400,000.
Yeah,
But which are 2 different buckets, so we, can't.
100%, but they both affect it, right? So
Well-
I'm,
That's interesting that she
But
says
the
that,
library
because I was there
was-
4 years, and that's all I talked about was how terrible
well,
it is.
It was in the
And it's one
column for
person,
the
so-
1.5,
right,
yeah,
so library.
for the operation stuff.
But the accessibility,
Was funded through the CCBM. That's
But-
what it was like.
Kind of back to Jenny's point, and again, I know there are restrictions on their reserves, but we do have to make some cuts. So if we're making some cuts, maybe we could consider the 10,000, and they could look at potentially some reserves funds for this, or put it off to next year.
They also have money from Friends of the Library, they also have a very large reserve pot, which is not.
It's not reserved, that's their own restrictions.
Yeah,
from
their
what I
own restrictions, they're
understand.
not legally restricted.
Well, they've
Some
got-
of them are restricted from the donor.
Yes,
Some of them absolutely are,
and then,
not all of it. Yep.
A point of clarity on the actual amounts for each one, so the community needs assessment is the $10,000, and the public education marketing strategy is the $18,000.
Okay.
if we're gonna cut it, I would sort of see the public education marketing strategy. To me, that's another consultant.
Is it?
They're both.
I just wanna
they're
clarify,
both-
are they? Okay.
They're both consultants.
Yeah,
Okay.
the needs assessment, they have to do that on a regular basis.
And that's the 10,000.
Yeah, that just guides their operations, right? That tells them what they.
Well, it tells them what the community wants.
Yeah.
From them, which is more important than, I think,
The media.
yeah.
I'm just splitting it out if we can have a look what,
So that's the 18,000,
So
Vicky?
but I can't say what the
That was the
priority is.
18,000 you're recommending?
The needs is, community assessment. So what effect would it have on which reserves if we try and fund more of this out of reserve?
So if you were, it would all come, a lot of it will come under CERT,
Okay, which is the,
or CRIF, or whatever we call it on a daily basis.
Certified, you keep beating up for my acronyms.
But it's not coming out of an existing one, it's coming out of what we would transfer, right?
Repayment back
It
to.
would, yeah, it would be coming out what we would transfer in,
The
right? Because
transfer,
at the end of the day, again, we talk about a little bit of a shell game.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a lot. you know, and I've been in the industry for so long, I've seen municipalities transferring this huge swack of money into reserves, and then the same year they're spending it all out. But on the KPIs, it looks good, because it looks good that we're making all these contributions to reserves, but they're spending it immediately, right? And so I've always been on the philosophy that if you're gonna spend something this year, you don't waste the time transferring. Just use current revenue, because you're, just use it, right? So that 466, so we just reduce our contribution to reserve, whatever it may be, and council could use it, because we're proposing to allocate it, council hasn't allocated it yet, right? So council has the option to decrease taxes by that amount, allocate it to reserves, or dump it into operating, use it for operating expenses. We're of the opinion, use it for reserves. It's debt repayment for a capital expense, that use that money so that the residents are already accustomed to that tax levy already. Use that to build your reserves back up in perpetuity.
I think you're gonna show us reserve impact at some point, right?
Yeah.
Good conversation.
I'm not comfortable with messing with what we're funding the library with, because you made a good point last meeting, Kathy, where it's been years and years and years. The library stuff is always the easy one to punt. Is what the devil knows.
We haven't punted them, they get an increase every year, don't say
Sure,
yeah.
but we're obviously with what they need to operate at the level they want to, you know, the whole Mary being the only single full-time employee there kind of shocked me.
I think that's a recent
but-
thing too.
And you're gonna lose her if we don't guarantee.
Yeah, which is fine, because you can get a new one.
No, that's not what we
that's
said
her-
when we
it's
talked
her
about
choice.
COLA.
Good point. I don't know, I'm with catching up on library needs in my mind, not, and just
I don't think
That's kind of a-
10,000 is gonna make
No.
commitment this year to kind of catch up on the library, not only with the accessibility, but with their operational needs. I think the study benefits us more than anything, where we can actually see when they're asking for increases as to what the community has told them they want. Because we got nothing right now. It's always been the thing, well, what are you using it for? Well, we're gonna use it for this. Well, is that actually needed? Nobody, you know, of course, they can say yes, but we don't have any, because we're not doing it, so.
We don't have the backstop.
I don't have the backstop, right? So that's why I'm just this year and then fight for that. I'm gonna need, for my own piece, that if we were able to reduce that 413 number to the 210,017.
Is that,
Reduce it by 210,017, which is
Yeah,
the large ice door, the public works overhead door, the sport fields, all comes out of reserves,
okay,
and then gating the 60K pre-design until the 112th ASP is done. That's only 1 year that we put that pre-design out. I'm not discounting the importance of the pre-design. Michael can do that.
alright, I'll do that, 210.
I'm not discounting it, I just thought there was an ability that perhaps we could do some of that internally, and that goes back to Chris's point of human capacity, because oftentimes you see that Riley's toque is more like a balloon, because his head's gonna explode, because he has so much.
hair left from all this.
No, I was saying, I was trying to say your plate is full a lot of the time, Riley, and so to say, just to throw it on your desk, I wasn't trying to be unfair.
Well, and I think when we talk about the human capacity, we're built on generalists in this organization, right?
Yeah.
Right, like, we don't have traffic engineers specifically to design traffic, because we only do it once every 5 years. Same as sewer modeling, we don't have sewer modeling experts, because we only do it once every 5 years. And in that 5 years, the technology changes, the modeling assumptions all change, and so, you know, we rely on consultants. Now, don't get me wrong, do we use a lot of consultants? Yeah, we do, and we find savings over time, yeah, but, you know, site planning is, you know, blocks and cubes for a pre-design, or, I'm not gonna use the word pre-design. A site design layout is something that you know, we can play around with blocks over the next 12 months. And we can probably say, hey, once the ASP's done, where that road's gonna be, this isn't gonna work any longer. Dispose of the site and put it up for sale. Or it becomes a secondary home for
Well,
parks.
yeah, it's just, we can cut the check for 60, and that ASP comes through and we go, okay, it's not the spot anymore. And we spent the 60, we're gonna go spend another 60 on a different piece of land. So
I have to see that ASP as to what it does to that piece of land, because if that road cuts that piece of land in half, I'm kinda out.
But why?
Putting
Yeah.
a
Because
public works.
I'm gonna give you an example, Okotoks is no different, it's the same way, and so is, City of Calgary has many, multiple
Fair
locations.
enough, James.
Okotoks actually is a campus, it's not one building, there is like probably about 6 buildings on that
Oh, yeah.
one plot,
You know,
right?
And that's what we would be looking at as a campus kind of,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not everything all in one building, because you're talking about a massive building, you've got shops and offices,
Yeah.
et cetera. And some of those uses don't mix anymore. from a
Absolutely.
safety perspective.
Without knowing, on to Craig's point too, without knowing where that road goes, do you put admin over there? Cause you're not gonna want the tractors going across between the two roads,
That's what I.
back and forth, so
Why
when
not?
you're going across the main thoroughfare, taking the loader back and forth through it.
But-
Riley
but
said
why
we
not?
wouldn't do it until the ASP was
It's
done.
an unknown, simply it's an
Exactly,
unknown.
but you're
It-
driving the
it
tractor
has to
out
be
on the
far
road
enough for
anyways,
that to
right?
be
Yeah.
nailed down before we start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if
So we're
that's
talking about
mid-summer
deferring
fall.
maybe 6 months.
5.4 goes to what?
4.1.
Goes to 4.1.
That's if you
If you,
That's if we remove 210, which funded through reserves.
been funded through reserves.
What did you say it went to?
by removing pre-design completely.
That's
Yes.
removing pre-design completely.
And reserves for large ice overhead door, sprung overhead door and sports bits, yeah, 4.1.
Can I throw another one, because I seem to be the bad egg? The website, I know it's important, I'm not saying defer it, I'm just saying, do we have, coming back to capacity, do we have the ability to bring this thing to a close and spend $100,000 in 2026? Going through the last one, I'm not so sure. Well, so I'm like, so what's the real spend gonna be, and should we be budgeting that proportionary amount for the work that we can get done on the website this year? Cause I'm not trying to be negative, but from the last experience, I can't see in 11 months, cause we're through January already, let's be real. We've got 11 months to go for it to be completed, up and running,
And that's certainly a strategy, and Michael, like, the last time we did, we were in the middle of COVID and we had some other
oh,
challenges.
yeah, I know, take that on the
Yeah,
side.
but at the end of the day, that's certainly a strategy as well, is to say, okay, we're gonna start this project September. And we're gonna broach it over 2 years, right?
So 50.
So 50 each year, that's a strategy that we could employ, for that, on a funding aspect. It may show up here as a capital item, right? Or, I shouldn't say a capital item, a special project item. And then we started at a specific area for that, because you're right, because right now we're in January, by the time we do the RFP, it's end of February, by the time we issue the RFP, it's end of March, by the time we award, it's April, right?
Realistically, we're probably looking at fall before we start that, so we could split it over 2 years.
Yeah, and we're not gonna cut the check to the whoever we award it to. We're not gonna give them a $100 check and say, okay, thanks, we're
No.
waiting for you to finish. In my mind, we always pay when we're done, when we get the finished product, so.
And Karen,
Yes, there can be stages of payment along the way because of work done, but blah, blah, blah.
and Karen's only she's only 6 weeks in, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
4 weeks in, right? So she's still got a lot of familiarity to get with her team and understanding how everything works, and throwing this project might be a little bit unfair, but
Yeah, realistically, we wouldn't have the website all done and ready to go this year.
Yeah.
After, going through an RFP process, that takes a little bit of time. And so I think it would be 2027 before we would have it ready. So something like that kind of approach, 50-50, that makes sense to me.
yeah. And the other piece I mentioned in the last meeting too, when we talked about this project, it's the human capacity of the subject matter experts that aren't relying on, communications is just facilitating the contractor to get, people like Jody and Jordan to update all their information. And we've got a huge amount of information on our website that just kept getting added to and added to and added to and added to, and we have to cull.
Yeah, we talked about that last time we
Yeah.
went through this.
Yeah. And we did a little bit of a cull, but then it started growing, as soon as it was live, it started growing again. right? And so it's like a bad disease sometimes.
Well, and the refuse management strategy will help with some of that as well. So the fall is realistically when we would start it.
So reduce it to 50 this year instead of the 100.
I like it.
Be 50 over 2 years.
Well, 50
Yeah,
this year,
100 over
50
2
next year, yeah.
And that's why I say there's multiple strategies we can employ here, right? Like, timing of projects is kind of key. Capital is a little bit different, like building stuff, we need to build in, May, June, July, and August, right? But other things like these operational stuff, even the doors, for that fact, well, actually, doors are actually really important, they need to be done right away, but those types of, transportation master plan might be something that doesn't start, it might not start until later in the year too, so, those are the types of things that we could kind of shoulder using different fiscal years.
So, I was just to say, we can cut that one in half too.
Well, at the end of the day,
What-
that's,
Can we look at what the difference cutting the website does? Because
3.9. We're down
then
to
we'll find ourselves
You go
next
from
year.
4.1 to 3.9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's, let's say 4.1, and I'm looking at it as, can I defend the 4.1% increase, and am I making a decision that's, based on what we need as an organization to operate it, to provide the services, and are we meeting what is being requested by us from everybody external to this room? So not just focusing on those, but if I go back to our full list of the, look at the 9th Avenue ramp up onto Happy Trails, directly requested by residents of the town. Yes, I can defend that as accessibility, especially for senior citizens and others with mobility issues to get up onto the berm to go attend events and stuff, for quality of life down in George Lane Park in the summertime. I can defend that one. BSRC large ice store, I can absolutely defend that because everybody's tired over there looking at an orange tarp. Museum air conditioning, I can defend that because that's a pretty key piece of our community, and that's a fair ask to have air conditioning in there. Sprung Door Public Works, I can defend that one. That's getting to be an operational and safety issue. Little Bow School roof repair, I can defend that one, $20,000. That's a request from Shepherd Family Park Society, and that's part of our responsibility to keep those buildings going. A new snowplow, well, who can't defend that with all the complaints we get about our snow removal, which you will never ever get rid of all complaints. Welcome to living in Canada. Zamboni battery replacement, that's just has to be done. There's no getting around that. Rotary windmills, well, again, a project directly with a community group that's spending a lot more than $50,000 on there, and I can guarantee you that. And it will be very cool enhancement to it.
It also celebrates their commitment to our community,
100%.
which has been
And
significant.
it also recognizes our relationship with our indigenous community, with Eden Valley and the Stonies being involved with High River. Water treatment, dewatering, that's just, keeping things rolling. You got a 112th Street assessment of that roadway. Don't tell me we haven't been asked to start to figure out something about that roadway. I can defend that. Public Works design, that's one we can defer. But not completely gate, we just defer it until 112th ASP is done. Fire computer refresh, you cannot screw with not providing fire what they need, same as fire rescue tools. Sport field upgrades, don't tell me we haven't been pushed to improve our sport fields, and that's a solid commitment that we're making to those groups. Transportation master plan, we've talked about that, how important that is. Library accessibility upgrades, that's been a long time coming. I'm 100% on board with improving the lighting, the roadway, the drainage, all these things that's been asked about on there. And then a website upgrade. Our website is a critical piece of information that people automatically go to. That's their first stop. And currently, it's not functioning the way we want it, and it needs to be done. So with all of that, can I defend a 4.1% increase? 100%. I'll do it all day long. We've deferred a number of these projects with much lower tax increases that will always come back into play. You do zeros like we have, COVID and all this other stuff, and to try to get through those tough times. And I'm not saying that everybody's loaded with cash at all, but we still have a commitment to our community that's our responsibility. We still have our main responsibility of operating this organization to the best of our ability. And in order to do that, we need revenue. And in order to fulfill what the community's asking, the money doesn't just fall out of trees. It's, you want to increase services, you want to increase amenities, they cost money. That's what a tax increase does. I think you guys have done a fantastic job of using the grants that we have available, making sure we're using that to 100% of our ability. I think how we're using reserves, and even if from that 466, and we use 150 out of it, we're still putting $309,000 into reserves. We're being responsible on that end. Like it's, I love the way you're presenting this year, Jordan. It's a breath of fresh air because I don't have to be sitting here making up my own spreadsheets to be trying to do this on the go. For me, I can defend 4.1.
And can I just clarify on the reserve contribution? That's 309,000 to general reserve, right? That's the general stuff. We still are making contributions to utility reserves.
Yeah, that's separate from
Yeah,
utility.
yeah.
Like it's,
So our overall contribution is much, to reserves overall for asset renewals much higher.
the surf reserve, that's the one you can use for future recreation, which is extremely important. Just because the pool's done doesn't mean that ends. As long as we're growing, you still have to see. There's people that want a new rink tomorrow, another rink, twin rinks, junior A rinks. We're talking tens and tens of millions of dollars, depending on what level you go. So, we're still putting money there. I still think in our reserve that we have a separate, broken out recreation reserve, but it's for only that purpose, just because of the expense of recreation that absolutely has to be provided by us. I'm good with 4.1, that's me. There's 6 more people that have a vote, so. You want to continue on?
Sure.
Unless anybody else has.
Yeah, how about, before we continue on, 5-minute break for everybody? Get up and stretch?
Grab a beer.
HR's and
Depending on
just
how
be
you're
careful.
eating 4.1, you want whiskey?
So everybody get up and take 5 minutes?
5-minute break.
We just mute the live stream, or, yeah, thanks, Kent, is it you?
Always say that.
Can't go to the washroom first.
Now let's make sure it actually works.
Do you want me to, I can use the red button on the.
Haven't gone into that yet, but
It's all words, they're basically the same, just, yeah.
Okay.
All right, shall we move on, continue on?
Unless council has anything while we're sitting in. Continue on.
Okay, so as we continue through, it's still assuming the 5.4% increase, so this isn't, like, I can't on the fly change it to any remodeling, just so everyone's conscious of that. All right, tax levy buildup. So this slide is showing prior year tax levy and kind of how it builds up to that full amount here. So you can see last year we've got 16.022 million, and then the required levy change for our draft operating budget, the one we presented to you last week, for 1.4, and then the incremental levy change on the operating budget that we've been talking about. This is like the library funding, etc. And then the current year capital funding for the capital projects. So that's kind of how it scales up to that total levy. All right, so this is this is where the residential average rate of the average assessment of a residential home impacts the model. So as you can see, with the 5.4% increase, this is how it would impact that average home's tax bill. So for the year, it would go up $384, and so that would mean about $32 a month increase. This is at 5.4. Now when we're done here, I can go back in the model for any adjustments, and I can quickly give you an update on this, just so you could see, like, say what a 4% would be, or 3.5, whatever you'd like. I'm gonna go through. And I put the assumptions down here. Again, the increase from a $450,000 home to a $500,000 home is what's driving the increase to the model here. So if a particular resident if their assessment went from, say, like a 475 to a 500, this would be smaller. It's taking into account this change, which
So
drives
that's
this.
the 384 based on the change
The
then?
change, exactly.
The change from what your assessment was last year to the assessment this year?
Exactly.
That's the difference in the change?
Exactly. So if you had a lesser change, then this would be a lesser change on your bill as well. And vice versa. Okay. So one thing we haven't talked about yet was tax ratios. It is another tool we could look at to see how you can redistribute the tax burden between residential and non-residential. Now, right now, the town has got a tax ratio of 1 to 1.3 from residential to non-res, and so we can also model that just to see how that would change a tax bill as well. And I just explained that slide here. There is no single correct ratio on how to do this. Like, even though the town has got a 1.3 ratio, it can differ widely depending on the mix of res to non-res. Just so it's really hard to benchmark it. This is just what we have. All right, so with the 5.4% tax increase, this is what it would look like for the tax bills if we change that ratio. This is only from a res perspective. So you can see at the current ratio, $32 would be an increase in $32 a month for an average tax bill. If we change the ratio to 1.4, that would decrease the residential increase to 29, and if we went to 1.5, that would be 27. So it does change the burden, it's just moving it from res to non-res, but residents make up the bulk of it. So this is how we might be able to change that.
Craig, there was a strategy a number of years ago, and I can't remember, was it to get them more even, or was it to separate them farther, and it was a step program that I just can't remember what the target was.
When we started in 2013, it was 1-to-1.
Okay.
It was to separate them a little bit.
Perfect, thank you.
And back then, it was a pretty aggressive, lot more than 1.3.
Yeah,
It was
sure
a pretty
was.
aggressive little
increase.
Yeah, I
step
remember
that
hearing about that.
everybody was kind of on. I shouldn't say everybody, that was being proposed to us. And not just by administration, not by council members, members of the public that were saying, now, I do not support going beyond 1.3. I don't.
Why?
Because most of these asks, what we're looking at are
Residential.
residential based, everybody. Like the one, going to 1.3, you know, I can support simply because those of us that have commercial businesses, I have no problem at all in paying a little higher share. Because I maybe use the roads and some of the infrastructure a little bit more than just a residential home does, because of the operation of my business. Whether it's grading of our back alley, or the snow clearing out in front that I need, or downtown snow clearing, sidewalk snow clearing, these kinds of things. There's just a little bit of higher impact on some of the road infrastructure for sure, and utility infrastructure. So I've got no problem in doing that, but going beyond that, could I go to 1.4? Probably, but you're making a $3 difference to people, right? I just think you gotta be careful of taking advantage of the commercial sector just because you can. And just to be, I'll say it, tax heroes for the residential. And the last thing I've ever said is I am not a tax hero. I will not give zeros just to be a tax hero. We have an operation, we have an organization that has to function, we have a community that has to function, and it's just the way things work. It takes taxes to do it, and we all pay it so that we have the facilities, the amenities, and the infrastructure to do it properly. So I say don't touch that ratio for me.
I'll agree, because I think it's a balance. Because we also have to look in the commercial side that those of us that operate businesses in High River also have employees. And those employees have residences and they spend money in town, and it's full circle. You know, to Craig's point about could his business absorb more? Sure. Could the business I run absorb more? Sure, but I agree that seems to be a fair place to land, considering residential to commercial and what those numbers are. So.
Well, and what they're looking at, what we're using them for is, like you said, more of a residential use
yes.
than a commercial use, or building commercial and economic.
Well, and if you increase that, you gotta understand that,
It drives more away.
you're increasing, like a downtown mom and pop shop that's maybe kind of riding on a month-to-month thing now.
Yeah.
You're increasing there.
How do we sit as compared to other communities with this ratio? For instance, if you can open a
Compare
business,
anything from outside.
if you're gonna open a business in Okotoks, what's the ratio there?
Yeah, so, I had these numbers written down on a piece of paper on my desk. So they're doing me good here. So Okotoks is, when you take a look at, they're almost ratio of 2 to 1. City of Calgary is just below 5.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah, they're expensive. Others are much higher than us, or not much higher, but between that 2 and 1.5-ish range. When I took a look at the numbers, Cochrane, I think is just at 1.7. Airdrie's at about 1.8. That's kind of their ratios. But they have a much more diverse and robust commercial core that's based upon larger box retailers than those other jurisdictions, right? So
I guess I'm wondering if we have a low commercial rate, comparatively speaking, why aren't we bringing in more businesses?
Because business decisions are not made on tax rates.
Sometimes they are.
Very rare. If the success of your business relies on, is dictated from taxes, you're way too tight on your business plan. You're done before you start. Like it's gotta be fair, there's a balance, and yeah, Vicky, like, if I remember right, back in 2013, that 2-to-1 was kinda where wanted to go, right? So, is having a 1.3, the big draw? No. There's other reasons. Why does Okotoks have a bigger commercial sector than High River does? Well, it's access to 1.5 million people that close. Like, it's just the tighter yard of that population. Luckily, we're just further out, and I don't want what I'm watching in Okotoks. So, but I don't think, from my opinion on watching these over 12 years, is that decision on taxes does not dictate where you're going to place your business.
Certainly hasn't so far.
That's the viability of your cash flow. What are you earning by what you're selling and the service you're providing? That's the predication of
Where you can market.
Yeah, whether you can open a door or not are their customers.
And we do have a lot more, I would say, mom and pop stores that we do have to, be cognizant of, for sure.
Any thoughts on moving off of the 1.3?
I don't see a big enough benefit to it. It's good to know that is an option for sure.
Well, it is a requirement that we discuss it. Right?
The municipal government allows for a maximum of 5-to-1, so I think you said Calgary's at that,
Just below, I think they moved it.
or the MGA, sorry.
Yeah, the MGA requires it. I think Calgary's moved below because the province was saying if they continue to be close to that 5, they were gonna step in and set their rates.
So what would the difference make to the commercial if we increased it? We're just looking at the residential here.
Would it just be the difference?
It's a complex question.
Oh.
Because,
It's your square footage.
well, the commercial assessment base is based upon income, a lot of it's based upon income models, right? And so, we were talking about that yesterday, what that would be, and it's not as easy to develop a model to give us a clear-cut answer on
So we really don't know how it would affect them.
if you increased it.
Yeah.
Ballparkish wise, if you had that shift, I think the math that we were working with, Gordon, was about $100K. It would be about $100,000 that you
Yeah.
would shift from residential to commercial.
Yeah, about, at the proposed levy here, the 18 million, I can do a really quick little check here, if you could stand by. From 1.3 to 1.4, you are transferring 169,000 from residential to non-res. So 169 at each
At each point one.
yeah.
169.
At that level.
And we don't have an average or any way of determining how that's gonna affect anybody. Like the mom and pops are gonna be paying less than say Canadian Tire of
Yeah.
that increase.
Yeah, exactly. That is the purpose of it, so that in any given year, they have 130% of the residential tax rate. So if they had the exact same assessment, the non-res would have just a little bit more tax to pay.
Myself, I'd like to increase it, but if there's not an appetite for that,
Increase it to which, Vicky? What's the number?
I'd like to say go to 1.5.
Yeah.
I think that's a larger discussion we need to have this year if there is an appetite for it, but I don't think there is an appetite for
Why,
it.
why don't we do this, or an option, to better educate us on economic development and everything else, because I've got, met with somebody last week that wants us to kind of dive into that economic development conversation a little bit heavier, and I think it's, with a new council, as much during an election as those two words come into play, what are you doing about economic development? Well, what does that mean, right? So, having an economic development conversation, starting that in the next couple of months so that we can kind of, what does that mean for this council? And what does a 0.2% increase on this ratio, how does that affect? Between Michael's business, there's a lot higher revenue than Lowry's funerals, there's a lot higher revenue than Evelyn's diner, right? Sheena's Sweets. Like how does that all work, right? Is that fair? I need a little bit more information before
we all
we
do.
jump by point 2.
But, yeah, it'd be nice to have that.
And I think then we can discuss that for next year's budget as to whether that ratio, because yeah, if you look at Okotoks is double what we are, if Calgary's quadruple what we are, yeah. I'm not using Calgary as a comparison, but they've got, I don't know.
Well, Strathmore's more comparable, 3.8.
Got 2.8.
Okay. All right, moving
So
on.
are we okay to leave it at park it for 1.3 for right now until we can have an economic development discussion?
Well, I guess we have to.
We don't have to.
Or not? Or do you want to run it to, Vicky's putting the proposal on it to bump to 1.5? Any appetite?
Want a more rational.
I can't make that decision right now without diving into
Yeah, I
it.
need more.
I mean, and I gotta put off my business hat because my immediate reaction is, no, I don't want to pay more tax, but to be honest. But I did also say earlier that, paying.
But you also own a home here in town.
Yeah, I would just like for us all to discuss it and have more information to make
That's
a
understandable.
very educated decision, yeah. I appreciate where Vicky brought it from, and I think there's probably some room to move there, whether it's this year or down the road, as the dynamic between commercial and residential changes in our community as we grow. So I think it's a good point for.
Park it at 1.3 for this budget.
Okay. That's good. All right. Next topic. Reserves. I have a caveat slide here too.
CYA slides.
Yes. All right, the reserve balances that we are showing are not final. There are still steps that must happen before we know the actual opening balances that we're working with. First, the 2024 surplus has not been allocated yet. This plan includes a recommended allocation and assumes council will adopt that for this deliberation purpose. But that decision still needs to be finalized. Second, 2025 year-end is still in progress, so the continuity balances include estimates rather than completed actuals. But even with these limitations, the reserve continuity is useful for decision making. It helps show whether projects are fundable, how different funding approaches affect reserve health. There are multiple ways we can fund the capital plan, and this version that we're showing here, like I mentioned before, is the grant heavy option. The reserve heavy option is also available and can be presented as well. So we're all on the same page there. Okay, so this is the grant heavy funding option to fund our capital projects basically, and some of our other ones. So our recommended opening balance looks like this. The top one is, this is SURF, even though it sounds a little different. Tax stabilization reserve is what we call it, but we could also call it an operating reserve, but tax stabilization is what it's called. This is our utilities. reserve, opening balance, and then we've got our offsite levies there. Our commitments are equal to carryover commitments, so commitments that we've already committed these reserves to, even in prior years, plus the commitments that we, per the proposed capital, spending for this budget. So it's a combination of past commitments and the ones that are proposed right now into one column. Additions represent any additions that we're talking about. This is the 466 on this top line, for example, is the one that we've been debating on reducing to fund those projects. I mentioned before there was a little bit for film revenue, because we discussed 2 days ago that film revenue is a restricted cash for use in art, that we can't really then flush it through the regular operating budget, we gotta put it aside for that reason, so that's reflecting that. Utilities is based on, we assume all surplus is going to reserves. So that's what these additions are. And so with that option, you can see how that kind of shakes out. So at the end of this grant heavy funding option, we will still have about 1.5 million left in capital or SURF. Tax stabilization will hover at 130. Utilities still at about 13 million, and because the offset levies is just flat there at 8. So this is how, ultimately this is showing how your capital projects are flowing through our reserves and how it impacts it. This is a number that we talk about a lot, basically what's left in our SURF.
Okay, so those are the, taking off-site levies out of play, because I don't really, that's something different, those are the 3 reserves we have, those are our 3 reserve accounts.
Utilities is broken out by different utilities, but I just
utilities gets kind of involved, but those are the 3, so the main 2 currently showing there that council can kind of, you know, has a lot more discretion over their use is the SURF and the tax stabilization reserve. Now that tax stabilization reserve is one that I would like to just get rid of, because in my mind, any reserve is a tax stabilization reserve. I think it's one, and there's not enough money left in it now. It was used for the purpose that we had it there from the money that we had during COVID that funded that, 4.5 million back then, has been used to stabilize taxes. So we're down to 130 grand. I don't see any point in keeping that reserve. You could roll that up into SURF, and what I'd like to see is the creation of a recreation reserve that would have some restrictions around it. But that does not have to be done today, obviously.
So you're not suggesting taking money away from either of the 2 and putting it to a recreation reserve?
No. I'm saying that we need to have a recreation reserve created and start to fund it. Because it's obviously, you know, with the aquatics, the expense of that project, and with the other requests that we constantly get. New rink, whole new facility, all this stuff, it's, you know.
Somewhere along the line.
Somewhere along the line, you gotta pull the trigger, you know, you're gonna be starting by building another rink somewhere. Then build up from there, but, you know, a basic standalone hockey rink for, I mean, I'm not saying junior A level 1,000-seat bowl or anything like that, but a basic one sheet of ice, you know, you're gonna be 30 million. And that's just to build the building. That's not purchasing land, putting infrastructure, feed it and everything else, right? So this is what I'm saying. Recreation infrastructure is rank expensive. And, you know, you can choose to less interest you pay, so.
To eliminate the tax. 100. So that would.
Reserve and you start with 150. Pretty quiet until I said that.
Context.
Okay.
So that's 611. Could go straight into afterwards.
Without changing any of the,
Without changing
any of the other capital projects.
Correct. It's just that, we've been paying off those debts, like you're operating a business, yeah, you have debt to get it going, and you're paying off, and then, what do? Is that just go back into the owner's salary? You can do that, or you can put it into savings, because you always know you're gonna have more capital stuff to go on, so that's where that field house payment was borrowed money, that there was a tax increase back then to reflect that payment. Already there. Everybody's paying it, so stick it in for future recreation.
That's not a bad
Again,
one.
you can be a tax hero and take that 611 and just reduce your tax that year and be a tax hero, but how are you gonna fund future recreation?
You're gonna be asking for it again.
You're gonna be asking for it again, or you're gonna be borrowing through the nose.
Yeah.
And the borrowing comes from the province, and it's not the greatest deal in the world. You get a little better interest rate, but restrictions on it, you can't pay it off with, you can't increase that, blah, blah, blah. You're beholden to it for.
Is that one,
40 years.
that particular project, is it through the government?
No, that's funded through the old finance authority aspect of things. Just so you guys know, there's been some municipalities that went out to the private sector for borrowing recently, and have been able to beat the government financing by about 2%.
Beat the government financing.
Yeah. I read that article.
Is that right, eh? See, there you go, and you would be able to have probably better payout options if
That's,
you.
so that's,
So
that was
so
the
what
other
I'm
part of
asking
it.
is, we can't pay this one off early.
This one we cannot.
Okay.
you're stuck in it, you're
with the
locked in.
government.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. There's no, like, the government terms, there's no flexibility for early buyouts, so, you know, usually most financing arrangements will have like a 10-year span that you can have an early buyout if you wanna buy it out, or reset the interest rate based upon what the interests are. So when you borrow it, maybe at 6% when you first borrowed it, all of a sudden now it's down to 3, you can renegotiate it at 3 for the next 10 years, or buy it out.
The provincial one, you cannot renegotiate.
You cannot renegotiate at all. If you borrow something for 25 years, you're in it for 25 years of whatever rate it is.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a strategy stuff.
No,
You're so lucky.
Regardless, we are where we are today.
no.
I got my 2 cents in. Thanks, Jordan.
That's the end of my slide deck. Couple things we could do is I could show you the reserve continuity that you're seeing here under a different option, but it doesn't sound like we necessarily have to go that way. The difference would be, it would be just more taken from this column here under commitments, and it would drop our closing balance down to much less, like near zero.
Get it to 0.
Yeah.
I don't think it's responsible. Okay, let's go back. Thanks, Jordan, thanks, Michelle. Let's go back to, we're sitting at 4.1 right now. Which, the only thing that we've actually gated to get to that 4.1 is the Public Works pre-design, which has been deferred till after the 100.
Can we change the website to 50?
And we changed the
Yeah.
website to
You
50.
can change the website to 50, which
Drops it to 3.9, yeah.
gets us to 3.9.
And
That's
the-
like retail price. If you go $4, it's a big number. If you go $3.99, people are like, oh, it's $3.
Walmart, happy face.
There you go. Everyday low price.
Everyday low price.
I think it's 97, not 99.
Okay.
397.
That's a quoted price.
The 7.
Well, 7, so they can put everything on sale easier.
Okay, so if we split the website between this year and next year, then we can get down to 3.9.
At 4.1, I did some dirty math, and it looks like it'd be about $292 per average household, which is just a little over $24 a month to the average household. That was really dirty math, so accountants over there, don't beat me up, okay?
I'm just gonna test it.
See if I'm close.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was dirty math.
On the average house, I have $29 increase
Yeah?
or a $352 increase per year.
That's at 4.1.
That's at 4.1.
And at
From the, in your deck was 384, right?
Originally,
Yeah, that's the number I was working off, was what was in the deck, I think it was a 384.
that's
So-
right, you got it. That's at the full 5.4%. If we dropped it to 3.9, that's when we'd go to, what did I just say there? Oh, sorry, you were talking 4.1, so if we dropped it to 4.1, the impact is $352 per year increase, or $29 a month.
There you go, okay.
What are you thinking, Craig, about this economic development stuff? Would be more for like into next budget, not before this.
Oh, for the ratio?
Mm-hmm.
I'm open to the discussion
I mean,
with where, I'd like to see what, you know, I think it's important for this council to have a discussion as to what economic development actually means and what are we doing about it. If it means, okay, we're gonna, again, hire a dedicated economic development officer, And that's kind of the direction, well, I feel that needs to be funded by the commercial sector. So then I can go to 1.4. I can go to, now that I kind of know what a 0.1 looks like at 169,000.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, you know, then the commercial sector can.
So you can go up by 0.2 to cover the what salaries of.
Exactly, and
But the
projects you
commercial
wanna do
covering
and
it.
stuff, right? If that's what the business sector in this town, I think when we do an overview of what economic development means, I think we do a whole day or two thing where we invite the business community to come in, tell us what, you know, we got businesses downtown, you know, and you don't hear from them for 4 years until the next election shows up, and then they go, what are you doing about economic development funding? Well, what does that mean, right? I need those guys in here, because even when I go back to them and go, okay, you said it somewhere, what do you mean by that?
I mean, there are,
So-
yeah, there are
That's
things that affect them, or, you know, road fixes and
Exactly.
snow clearing and stuff, so yeah.
I think there's lots of things that we need to talk about as to what economic development means for us. Because it can be a absolute waste of money dumpster fire, or maybe it can have some benefit. Right now, what our theory is on economic development is having people like Heather Ross in play, where she focuses on events, those that drive people to our town. That's our, you know, she's it. Other people want, you don't have an economic development officer. Okay. We've had 3 of them in my 12 years here. Let's talk about that and what value and what would they be doing? What's their measurable of success? That's a tough one. But that's what I mean, starting this economic development. The other, you know, the person that I talked to for a couple hours last week, you know, their big thing was relationship building between the town and the chamber. The town, the chamber, and businesses. Relationship building, okay. That's one thing you could do if we're looking at just getting to know you, fine. But how much money are you willing to spend on that? If that's all you're doing. Well, there's a multitude of things, Jenny, that I think we need to discuss as to where we're gonna land, and I think that's what I kinda need to support a ratio increase. Michael?
On that ratio increase piece, because maybe I heard you wrong, but it made it sound like if we change the ratio, we're gonna have funding to potentially put towards an economic development officer. Doesn't create more funding.
Correct.
No.
It just changes.
As soon as I said that, I just should have rewound. it.
Changes the bucket.
It just changes the bucket.
So it will be an additional spend if we go that way. It's,
The longer you're,
sorry,
Ozark.
One of the things I'm noticing in the presentation is that about 2 million, not quite, of the cost that raises our tax levy comes from operating. We haven't, you know, we've got room to cut in that operating, we really do.
You said you had a list.
I do.
why don't we, would that be okay
Do
to
the
hear
list.
some of your list?
Let's go.
Sure.
Yeah.
For starters, I guess I wanted to know, line 72 recruitment, and these are small amounts, but they add up, 38,000. I thought that's why we did the COLA, so that we wouldn't have as much recruitment. You know, there's a chunk of recruitment, for instance.
Recruitment, Chris, is that for positions that we currently have unfulfilled
Yes.
right now?
Yeah.
Right?
And throughout the year, there's always some vacancy, and so there's always ongoing recruitment that takes place.
So what's the actual basis of the cost of recruitment? I mean, you're talking advertising, or are you talking?
It's advertising, and sometimes we do have to hire like a headhunter, for lack of a better term, to find those harder to fill positions that we've tried on our own the best that we can to recruit, but we need to hire a consultant to help us with searching.
Okay, and so and you're saying that we have enough vacancies that we're gonna have to spend 38,000 on recruitment?
Yeah. So it is, like just one posting, for example, if we were to hire a consultant, it's anywhere between like $10,000 to $18,000. So that's 2 recruitments a year with that money. And that's not even talking about the, like job postings on job boards. Like a job posting on a job board is anywhere between like a couple hundred to 500 or 800. And we post on multiple places.
And we got a big recruitment program coming up for the aquatics expansion. So, you know, that additional staffing that you budgeted for, that council's budgeted for within the operating budget, we have to recruit for those positions. Some of them are existing that are already in the budget, but there's a whole bunch of new positions that we have to recruit for, including a new manager of aquatics. That is kind of feeding into that number too. So there's, how many positions? 10 or 15 into new aquatics?
Oh, at least, yeah,
At least.
that's
We're-
FTE, not positions.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the casual, when you're doing casual, it's a lot more in terms of FTE.
Yeah.
That also, we're also concerned about our recall with those stuff that have been laid off, they've been laid off a significant amount of time.
Okay,
So
thanks. What else you got?
I've got training and development, that's another big ticket item, 311. I'm looking at, first question I have is what's the difference between fire and emergency? Because between the two of them, we're close to 90,000
So,
for training and development.
yeah, so fire is purely the firefighters.
Right.
And they're trained to be certified under either safety codes or NFPA standard, especially as we've gotten an additional casual complement. The emergency management aspect of things is for all the EOC training that Steve mentioned, all the emergency center operations that Steve mentioned last week, getting everybody up to speed in operations section chief, planning section chief, directors, all that emergency management piece that we have to have ongoing training and certification for to meet provincial requirements.
Okay. So you're saying ongoing, this is a yearly thing?
Yes.
And what is fleet training? It's a small amount, but what is fleet training?
How much?
Huh?
How much you got?
It's, 2250. It's not a lot,
Yep.
but I'm just curious what it is. How do you train a fleet?
Probably be for like our mechanics and whatnot.
I'm not hearing you.
It'd be for our mechanics.
Mechanics.
So train them on the latest diagnostic software or they have safety training, so along those lines.
And roads, we're training roads for 9,500.
Yeah, so again, same thing, it would be what's the latest processes, so for example, ice maintenance, snow plow and road ice clearing, things like that. Training operators as they progress through their career from the smaller equipment to the larger equipment. For example, graders is always hard to have someone trained for, so we try and train our staff in terms of getting them up to speed and being able to use the grader. Ground disturbance, confined space, there's quite a bit of training.
Okay. And then line 75, we seem to have duplicate lines. Like, sometimes you've got a P number and then you've got an F number. What's the difference? Same
F
category.
are for facilities and P is for parks, so parks are looking at sort of the outside
Okay.
maintenance piece, whereas facilities look at the buildings.
Travel. Why are we traveling? To the tune of $45,000 a year.
So that would be travel expenses for staff to go to conferences. So if they're going to an outside conference in Edmonton or Banff or wherever the community may be, it's for those expenses, hotels, accommodation, travel time, and per diem.
Can we reduce that any?
It would be directly related back into the training allocation, so it's directly proportional. We have gone through and reduced some training already. It is, you know, when we break it out, training allocation on a per staff basis is about $1,500 per staff member that we try and allocate. But we can always improve and find some things. Some things are mandatory trainings that we have to get operators certified in, say water operations or sewer operations. They have to maintain their certification. But then there's certainly some optional training as well. Some of our professionals have continuing education credits that they have to get by going to conferences, so our planners, our engineers, some of our supervisors have to maintain those continuing education credits to keep their certifications moving forward that we request. So we can certainly take a look at a deeper dive into optional stuff.
Yeah, and that's basically what this whole 8 pages is about. Is can we do a deep dive and can we find some savings? Can we find $1 million?
Yeah, certainly I think from the training side of things, we can go through the list and reduce some of the optional training that's not required for certification and take a look at that. And you know, we're also trying to work on developing our employees to provide better value back to our organization by providing them with training opportunities too. So it's part of the attraction piece too for retention. A lot of employees will look at the ability to train and grow and making sure that they've got the skill set to grow with us.
And I understand that, but we're building a lot into retaining the employees on a lot of different levels. COLA, training, travel, and it adds up to a lot.
Yeah, it's been an overall strategy for sure. That's what we're hearing from our employees that do exit interviews and what we're learning, and that's how we came up with the compensation framework that was adopted by council in 2022.
So sorry, Vicki, you mentioned, you know, about looking for efficiencies, looking for, so to bring some of this stuff together. And did you say $1 million that you were looking for?
Well, I thought, yeah.
Shavings of $1 million?
Yeah.
But to come up with these numbers, you met and you went through these with each of the, the staff. It's not like these were just randomly chosen.
No.
And there's the zero-based approach
And
as
here's
well,
the
right?
That's right.
Go ahead, Vicki.
My understanding was that you asked them to give you their zero budget, but you didn't meet with all of them, did you? And review them?
Yeah, they did 2 days.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
3 times
For-
or something.
just on the consulting fees again, what's CCM?
Is that
CCMC?
Yeah.
CCMC, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, Charles Clark.
Charles Clark Medical Center.
why are we having consulting fees on Charles Clark? Because we are.
Yeah, so we have a property manager that looks after all the tenants over there. And so manages all their concerns, makes sure all the maintenance is being done. And so that's the consultant that we use there. So it's a property management company.
What's the number there?
I have to find it, I didn't
Okay,
write that
that's
one.
fine.
Oh, sorry, 100K. HR consulting, what are we consulting on HR? And
Yeah,
why?
To dig into that one. We do have a benefits consultant that we use that helps us reduce our benefits program. So they work with our benefits provider to get a lower rate. And then in there, we would also include, like for example, if we need a specific, like right now we're working on performance management, or last year we did some work around wellness. So there might be kind of some specific target areas that we're working on. We've also used them in the past for compensation.
So, if we're using an HR consultant to get a better deal on our benefits, are we saving $16,500 or more?
Oh, yeah, at least.
How much are we saving?
Last year, and I have to go in and actually look at it, Vicki, but I mean, like it's upwards of about $20,000 to $25,000 that can be easily saved.
So nets out at 4?
4 to 9.
4 to 6.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Fire, why do we have a consultant on fire for 17.5?
I want to have to double check on that one, but usually that's trainers that they bring in.
Yeah.
So trainers for chainsaw safety,
Right?
trainers for some of the new technology that they bring in for firefighting, that's what things that our fire chiefs don't have the skill set to train on. Some of it will be consultants, you know, mostly it's training consultants, and
Maybe.
So
and
that's
some,
in addition to the training section up above.
yes, so that training session is just employee costs.
So we pay them to come in and the employees pay?
Mhm.
Okay.
No, the employees, our training, their cost is covered. So at the end of the day, some of those consultants will be providing that advice,
Mhm.
right? So some of them will be creating, you know, I'll have to get the exact details from Steve on what that all encompasses, but
Yeah.
that would be helping set up training programs. Some of it is also support for the fire academy.
Mhm.
So the fire academy that we provide to the high school,
Right.
so.
And that doesn't come cheap. Painting messaging is costing us $27,200.
Painting messaging.
Painting
Be a road
messaging.
project with broken.
It's under services and under
lines and
storage.
message.
Road lines?
No, painting
They have-
messaging, not the painting,
They have 3 categories for painting.
messaging.
So I think there's crosswalks, lines, and messaging, parking lots maybe, and lines.
What's the messaging for at 27,000 and change?
That would be a question for them.
Well, they're looking, can I also interject that maybe, and again, we don't wanna add a whole bunch of convoluted lines, but it sounds to me like some of these things that are under consultants are not consultant. It's maybe,
Contracted services.
yeah,
right?
it's
That's probably a better
maybe
term
not
for it.
labeled,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of the growing pains with the new GL is that some of this is gonna be contracted services.
Fair enough.
From that perspective.
It's still money.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah,
represents
no,
money.
100%, but we know there's a negative connotation, you know, with lots of people when you say a consultant. And lots of these are not consultants.
The fact of the matter is though, this world is going to go to more consultants than less. It is highly inefficient to continue to bulk up, and no disrespect to employees here, but to bulk up here, when you give a good example, like if we were to hire a traffic consultant, when we don't need it, right? But there's a lot of communities that have done that. So there's going to be a lot of things that are subbed out, right?
And I think the reality is a community of 15,000,
Yeah.
we're not big enough to employ that expertise.
And even if we're at 30,000,
Yeah.
we don't, the old way of thinking, and I say old way, let's say 20 years ago, is like, oh, we need this position, and so does Okotoks, and so does Strathmore. Well, really, you could have one consultant between the 3 of you probably, right?
Yeah, and I think that's been the kind of the change over time too, is that there was that belief of, you know, kind of hiring all the experts within your own staff.
Yeah.
And then now, like I say, we're a group of generalists, right? We know a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
But then we really need to get answers. Sometimes we have to bring in some of those experts that support us.
City of Calgary has been going that way for several years. I've seen it because I deal with them regularly. And just an example is like urban forestry used to have like hundreds and hundreds of people working for them. And now they're probably down to like 40, right? They manage contractors, they manage the projects, they manage, and that's a general statement. And there's a lot more to it than that, but that's what's kind of happening, right? Because they don't need 150 extra staff, whatever, right?
I can give you the detail on what roads put in there. They put it under services operational, so they have crosswalk painting at $14.12 per meter squared, and they're estimating approximately 1,500 meters squared, so that's 21,200 of the 27,200. And then they also have stop lines and directional arrows, which is an additional 6,000.
So you're
And
saying,
there's detail on those too.
sorry to interrupt, but the painting messaging is crosswalks?
Oh, sorry, yeah, painting messaging. Yeah, that's what they have in there is crosswalks. So,
Crosswalks, arrows,
And stop.
stop, yeah.
yeah, and then they have
Stop
parking
lines.
lots.
Lines.
And I thought they had regular painting line. So regular line painting's 11. The messaging is the crosswalk, stop lines, and directional arrows. And the parking lots are then the parking lots.
So the messaging is just your directions on the road,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like that's, it's not a verbal doc, or a document.
It's a turning arrow, it's a straight through arrow, it's a
Yeah.
stop bar.
And that's, are we hiring that out or that's our internal
That's
cost?
contracted out.
I can give you a little bit more detail on the HR and the fire. It looks like the fire one is for wildfire mitigation strategy consulting. And the HR one is primarily the benefits and then also some money for investigations, like workplace investigations such as respect to workplace.
That have to be third.
That have to be funded, yeah.
Looking for this storm in here, there it is. It's under service operational, 155,000. What is that about? Is that storm sewers? Is it storm catchment basins? What's, or,
Sorry, it's storm,
okay, it's column A 350, line 84.
What's how much?
155K.
Do you want the lines, the line detail?
Sure.
Yeah.
They've got beaver mitigation for 12,500, sorry. Beaver, mitigation,
At how much?
at 12,500. Storm pond quality environmental federal is 17,500. So we'll leave that one's required, is that what you?
that would be water
Else?
center, yeah, water center.
Dike inspection and maintenance at 15,000. River gauge stations at 20,000. Maintenance of sewers, pumps, water, recirculation at 45,000. And maintenance of storm underground is 45,000. So repairs and cameras, for 5 kilometers of cameras. And he's got additional detail on those pieces.
So that's based on last year's usage or?
Just
I'm sorry?
So he's got to a certain degree.
zero based, but they're going to be looking at their last numbers for, it's zero based, but they'd be looking at last year's numbers. For example, beaver mitigation is fairly constant. So we would be looking at what were paid historically on that one.
He said that one was increased by 5,000 to incorporate the costs for pond levelers each year.
Yes.
Whereas he's reduced the storm pond quality estimate based on the prior year. And also the river gauge, it looks like maybe improved calibration and communication. And some of the communication falls into IT's budget.
So, I noticed that you've got, line 91, 18,500 for public relations for us? What's that about?
That, do you want to speak to that?
I believe if it's the right line I'm thinking of, those are the different contributions that are made for the Foothills Country Hospice Gala, the rodeo contributions, is that the right category for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a list of
Events that.
at least a half dozen contributions that fall into there, like the High River Healthcare Foundation dinner and some other donation pieces that fall under that council public relations.
Are there any
List if you want.
savings to be
Yeah, I
found
missed a
there?
few, there's,
I was gonna say, I have your list.
oh, thanks, Michelle.
Or reduced funding then?
What was the number?
The amount?
18,500.
18,500.
91.
And it's
relations
line
down
91. I'm just looking for ways we can try and bring this number down.
Okay, I got a question before we move on. Your beaver mitigation at 12.5. I keep getting told there's nothing you can do. What do you spend?
It's wrapping trees and saving trees. Yeah, so it's wrapping trees that we plant so that they're not being taken down by the beavers. and leaving the little.
And wrapping existing.
And wrapping existing.
Yes,
And then that down in works or views and everything.
It's everywhere. Yeah, we're seeing it now happen in the ponds in Monrose and other pond areas too, so, yeah, so.
On your list in the northwest?
I believe we do, yeah. They're there, yeah, they're everywhere, and
I don't know how they got there, but.
and so we're looking at different ways also from part of that process is to prevent them from getting the culverts and plugging up culverts, so that's some of the money that you see within that budget too, is to place pond levelers so that they can't get in there to block them off. So,
Well,
did I
that's
answer your question about beavers?
They've answered mine.
Next question, there's a big figure under salaries for assessment, how many full-time equivalents is that? It's 271, 824,
That's two. Yeah,
and we need two?
yes, we do.
Yeah.
Actually, they would like to have more
Yeah.
assessment.
And then we've got HR training at 51.5.
That is for the whole organization. So the training budget that we do corporately, so things like respectful workplace, leadership training, team building, anything that we do more on a corporate basis is contained under HR, not in each bucket. So it's just amalgamated.
Can we save on that at all?
We've cut it already.
And training is important, like in any business, not just this. Like if I don't keep up my training in my business, then who am I as a hairdresser, right? It's really important.
Yeah. Well, and what we're seeing too is this, as we get more and more familiar with respectful workplace and violence in the workplace, that requirement under workers' compensation that we have to fulfill, it's leading to more and more investigations and more training that coming out as recommendations from those investigations to train staff on what is respectful within the workplace.
Okay.
So it is becoming an onerous process. A good one, but an onerous one.
RCMP is mostly considered a consultative service?
It's contracted service, yeah, majority of it. So about $2.9 million is contracted through the RCMP, through a service contract, and then the remainder is our staff, that we have 3 staff members that support them at the front desk, and that's our cost that totals into that total cost of $3.2 million.
And they're categorized under consulting.
Yeah,
I mean-
the title,
Yeah.
I think that's the GL we gotta work with, is consulting or is it contracted services? I think contracted services might be a better descriptor for what's in that segment.
Sorry, just trying to find this on your grid here. Oh, geez, 700.
If you call it out, we might be able to help you find it on the grid.
Okay. Well, I was looking at column A700, X700, and X701,
So planning,
I guess, I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
yeah, planning, short-term planning, long-term planning, and community development is A720. And the A700 is planning, X700 is short-term planning, X701 is long-term planning.
The 700s are planning, and then the 720s would be affordable housing.
Well, it's community development.
Okay,
A720 is community development, and X720 is filming.
700s.
Any room for maneuvering in there? at all. It's a big item.
How much?
Is there anything specific?
Huh.
You know, salaries and wages is pretty,
Sad.
$645,000 in planning. And that's including our development officers, 2 full-time development officers, a part-time development officer, and then a senior planner and a planner, plus a manager of planning. So that's, and a planning tech, or sorry, planning tech.
So we have a big planning department.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's one of the capacity issues, or capacity contingencies, I guess, for us being able to do the land use bylaw primarily in-house.
I'm confused by the filming bit. We have user fees of
Yep.
37,000 and filming grants of 45,000. We seem to be losing money on that. Column
Yeah.
X 720, line 121.
So that, that's pretty dope. Okay.
It would be a year in arrears, though.
Oh, it's always a year behind, so,
And
because
they're-
we build up the reserve based upon the revenue, and then we allocate money through council resolutions for, tree art, as well as some goes to CVAC, and then it all is done by resolution, so that's the actual commitment from previous years of what has got to be paid out in 2026.
So that's the 45K.
Yeah.
That goes to CVAC, right?
Some of it goes to CVAC, some of it goes to tree art.
Okay. Didn't seem to lose money on that.
Well, it's,
I know.
it's
It's
from,
following.
yeah, it's cascade. So that's the projection that we think 2026 is gonna have, but, 2025, for example, I believe the number that you're gonna see is around $65,000 or $70,000 was what we achieved in 2025, which is about $30,000 more than what we forecasted.
On column 5, F, 801, we seem to have a concession with no income.
Yeah, so that's the concession at the arena. And so, Riley, you wanna explain that?
I won't be there.
Pretty simple, in order to have a concession there, we free rent.
You what?
In order to have a concession there that can
Yeah.
be there, we've given them free rent.
So, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, we can tell you the story, it's a long story.
We used to lose a lot of money there.
We used to lose a ton.
Is that right?
So when we ran it ourselves, it was ran at a significant loss. We moved over to a consulting model. We were getting rent at one point, but it just wasn't feasible. We were having problems with tenants. So eventually we ended up at the point where it was zero.
And the rent was.
It was $400 a month.
Exactly, it was $400 a month, it was
So-
$4,800 a year.
The rent is zero, and we still maintain the space, so like, it's still all our equipment in there. So we give them the space, we maintain the stoves, we maintain the fire system, and then they provide the service.
It's tough to run a restaurant on poutine and a Diet Coke.
A good hamburger does help.
Counterintuitive, one makes you feel better than the other.
And a lot of other communities are doing the very same thing.
Exactly.
Space to do it.
Yeah, these recreation, I don't know of one that does their own, it's all,
Yeah,
Blackie, I think the Egg Society does their own.
they do,
I
yeah.
have D.
Blackie.
Bobby runs it,
Bobby,
or not,
Dee
Dee Dee runs it.
Dee runs it.
So our other big ticket items in that operating budget all seem to have to do with ice and aquatics. Then a bit, well, there's parks in George Lane. Are there not any efficiencies or ways we can reduce the costs here? Because, God, aquatics alone is $536,000.
You're looking at reduced service levels at that point. I mean, you could cut back hours, you could, it's probably the main one to do it. I mean, the staffing is pretty much what it needs to be. There's some efficiencies, we could move some staff around. I know we've had a lot of talks about ball diamonds, and Nicole will be coming back to speak to that, and there's a little bit of efficiencies there. Is it a direct cost savings? No, it's about managing service levels internally.
Well,
So there's not really a lot of savings there unless we want to cut out, again, cutting hours and cutting services.
yeah, there's no comparing the ball diamonds to the aquatics, the field house, and the parks. I mean, there's no comparison.
Right.
Just, we're underserving those outdoor sports. Soccer and baseball, we're grossly underserving those. But we are overserving, I think, somewhat in cost-wise. If we look at just the balance of the cost benefit. The rink, the curling club, the ice plant, the field house, and the aquatics are huge items. Those, together with the parks, are like $1.5 million or more.
Yes.
And I'm just ballparking that, looking at my paper here. So,
They're expensive to staff, 100%.
they are, I'm sure, and it's expensive to
Recreation
maintain.
facilities are expensive to run, they're expensive to maintain, it's just the way it is. Now, like I said, you could reduce service levels to meet a number, but I can guarantee you, the next day, your council chambers will be full.
Yeah,
And wait for the aquatics groups to show up. Because
The aquatics does reflect a reduction in
Yes.
hours already.
Yes.
So that last hour, we have found that the usage has been low. The brief in your package goes into a lot more detail in terms of the actual usage and whatnot, but it is shaving some time off our hours already.
So you guys are constantly looking at those efficiencies and trying to see what works and doesn't work, yeah. How many
But with
people
the
are in a
new
pool?
With the new pool, you may want to keep it open that hour too. Sure, the existing pool isn't used because it's -5 to crawl into that water. Because you're too cheap to turn the heat on.
Yeah, but that's
It's cool, the pool's cool. I'm gonna get into it when the pool opens. But when you got the new facility with, much broader usage of how the new pool can be used, you may want to be extending that, because,
We may, yeah.
right? So
We'll have to watch it.
it's all about what service level you can go after, and yeah, I was shocked when I first came on board, Vicky. I was blown away as to the cost of recreation and recreation facilities. They are expensive, and they are
Well, it's
tax
never cost
subsidized,
recoverable.
and it's
I
never
guess,
cost
well, no, I'm not
recoverable.
expecting cost recovery, but it's the discrepancy between all of the money poured into literally a couple of sports,
Mhm.
and the other sports really kind of left behind. But now I'm gonna move on. We're spending $79,000 on flowers. Sorry, I'm a gardener. It doesn't.
Big
I've got
cost.
a horticultural society, you've got any way to involve them, and there are ways to save money on flowers.
Again, it's a service level conversation.
Yeah.
That's flower beds, that's the hanging baskets downtown. The hanging baskets take a lot of work. They're intensive, there's a lot of flowers there.
I know. So, do we need that many flowers? Do we want, are we making a policy decision to spend $79,000 on flowers? And not look at any other options?
I am 100% in continuing on with what we're doing now because of the beautification it brings to our downtown.
Oh, people comment on it all the time, I love them. And we're putting $50,000 into a traffic circle, 79 seems minimal for our entire town, personal thought.
The traffic circle meaning the windmill things?
Yeah.
Well, so you add that together, you're at 150 or better.
Michael?
Can we come back to recreation just for a minute?
Yeah.
Because that's where Paul may have it. Cutting costs is one side of it, and what I would like us to get into this as council is the fees that we're charging. That's the other side. What's the revenue? So I think that's the side we need to speak to. we don't cost recover, everybody's mentioned that here, but that is a point of discussion to increase revenue in those facilities and to those user groups, is another way to look at it. So I'm interested to have that discussion and see where this new council is at on where those fees are at now and what we might do with them. So that's the other side of it, right? We can shave things, but we can also charge people more. So there's two sides to the equation. I just wanted to bring that up to SLT, that's a conversation that I'm sure is poised to hit us at some point here in the very near future, so.
Rates and fees by law.
Yeah. And we need to start talking about rates and fees for the new aquatics facility as well, right? What those are gonna look like, and what the structure's gonna be. So yeah, recreation, you know, when you take a look at the data that the province provides on recreation services across the provinces, most communities are in that 40% or less range of cost recovery. There's the outliers like a Cochrane or a Sherwood Park that's in the 60s or 70s range, but nobody gets close to 100. And the fee comparisons too are, you know, all over the map when it comes to certain things. You know, certainly we can, you know, the level of service conversation is always available for council at any time of the year, not just budget, but we can talk about increasing, decreasing hours of operation of recreation services. But we do know that when we have made adjustments or when we've had to close for a day, you know, for emergency purposes or whatever, we do get lots of feedback from our clientele that they're not happy, even if they understand that. So, you know, while if you take a look at our user numbers and, you know, that report that Riley put together for the aquatics, you take a look at the overall user numbers, you know, you're not anywhere near 15,000 people as the population. You're probably about, you know, a third of the community or less, but that's similar with the library too, right? A third of the community or less is using it. And so that's kind of the population that we try and serve is the majority that use it, so. But we can certainly have a level of service conversation on the hours of operation. You know, instead of opening at 6, do we open at 7? Do we close at 9 instead of 10? And have those conversations with all the user groups that we have.
I just think we've got to find in this operating budget some maneuvering room, some reductions, some savings.
I think in fairness, we did see some of the budgets that had done that with the new zero-based approach. So, you know, just that there was some work on that.
I'm sure there's been some work, yeah, I don't deny that.
Yeah.
That's a big jump in the operating budget, I'm just saying.
Well, and recreation, you know, recreation is feeling the hit from the aquatics expansion and the increased staffing and the increased operational costs associated with that new pool.
No, I'm just looking at the levy change. You add the operating budget in our deliberations, somehow we added 265,066. It's almost $2 million.
Well, those changes that you added in the 265, that includes all the library asks, right? That includes, correct me if I'm wrong, the change in COLA to 2%, right? And we haven't talked about where council sits, and if it's gonna stay at 2% or if it's gonna come down.
RCMP.
And which?
RCMP.
And RCMP costs, right? So, that's what's in that number that you're dealing with right now within those changes. So.
When we get into the items like what you're discussing, like, you know, 100% valid. The end of the day, where we sit, you know, I have to put an enormous amount of trust in Chris and our staff and SLT and all our divisions, that they are on board with where our job is. And I think with the zero-based approach helps from, you know, because it's not uncommon for any organization that if you've been given a budget one year, you do everything in your power to keep it next year. And maybe pad it a bit.
And power building.
Right, that's exactly, right? So I think you guys have done a fantastic job, and I know Chris, like, the piece that I trust about Chris is that he's always on his staff to keep things, get him as tight as possibly can. That's the trust we have to put into these. You know, can we grab 10 grand here, 20 grand here? You know, maybe you can get it, but we also gotta trust our administration that and it's our responsibility to provide them what they need to operate this organization properly. If it doesn't, it comes right back to us as to why can't I get this? Why can't I get that? Why isn't the pool open? You know, why'd your ice plant go down? We got, you know, minor hockey isn't blah, blah, blah. Why'd the Zamboni quit halfway through a tournament? Right? These kinds of things. So all comes back. I am confident in seeing where things have gone over the last 12 years in different ways that where we're at today. I'm really confident in this budget, and I'm really confident in the 4.1 and everything that entails. That's where I'm at. Take out the 50K for the website, go to 3.9. All right, Walmart happy face.
$3.99.
Right? So go for it. That doesn't bother me a bit. But correct me, Jordan, but this move from the old software, the Bellamy, to the software you're using now, the new software, once we have this transition done and a year under our belt, going forward in the future, we're gonna have a lot easier way to do comparisons in these different departments and exactly where money's being spent. Like already, what you've presented this year, you know, take line painting, for example. My God, the fact that that's broken out that much and we can see that is fantastic. If you want to go in that deep, right? It allows people that do want to go that deep, you absolutely can. So very much appreciated.
So the last time we saw that was probably a meal with spreadsheets.
Oh, Jesus.
And line by line, but.
Yeah.
Well, and part of the
Counting ledger.
part of the transition too is this consulting versus contracted services. It's the language that we use that needs some refinement too, right? Because we just kind of built this UGL based upon what we see, but yeah, probably consulting is the wrong perception. It includes contracted services, includes consultants, but it also includes contractors that do line painting. That it includes Volker Steven, for example, as a contractor. It includes the ice guys, the cooling plant guys that come and treat, service our ice plant once. StarTech every twice a year, right? So those would be all consulting services, but it should be turned to contracting services.
I guess my position is this, it's not that I don't trust or rely on staff, Craig.
Yeah.
It's that there's a difference. There's 7 of us who have a duty, an obligation to do what I've just done. And line by line, can this be reduced? Can this be refined? We have oversight, that's our job. And I'm gonna carry on doing it for 4 years, sorry.
100%.
That's what we're supposed to do. And it's not a lack of trust in staff. It's a collaborative effort between your council and staff to try and let us do the oversight. You bring us the work, we carry on that way. It's absolutely necessary.
The difficulty, the difficulty for us as council, as to how deep a dive we go in, is that we're not directly involved. So we don't know, right? And you can challenge it and question it and everything. And if you don't get the answer you're looking for, well, then you go for it. But, you know, every counselor has a choice as to how deep we go. I'm careful of getting myself too far into the weeds. You can go there if you wish. That's 100%. Everybody's got their choices to how deep. Sorry, Michael.
No, that's where I was going. To say it's our responsibility on the oversight piece, absolutely. But we participate at a 50,000 foot or 100,000 foot level. We have one employee, and that's Chris, and ultimately, that level of detail is his responsibility and we oversee him. That doesn't mean that we can't you can't, I can't, Craig can't dive into every line item, and some people are wired that way, they'd like to do it, and you sharing this with us today was fantastic, but, I mean, ultimately, sorry to point the finger at you, but if there's something that doesn't, that doesn't work here, that's where we go to, and it's, okay, you're doing your job or you're not. And that's who really that level of responsibility lies with Chris and then through his team, so, but that doesn't mean when we get together, we can't do what you've done just here, which is great to get into some of those things. And thanks for doing it.
And Vicky, that's why we provide the detail. I know lots of administrations that don't provide the level of detail that we provide. And we have nothing to hide, right? You know, my philosophy is no secrets, no surprises, on all aspects of things. And so we're welcome to have that conversation. Can there always be, you know, shave $1,000 here, shave $1,000 there? Yeah, you can always kind of sharpen your pencil as best you can. But sometimes you come across things that all of a sudden you take that $1,000 away and all of a sudden something else happens and goes up on you and you're looking for it, there's not no one, right? No consequence. So, you know, welcome for you to send me that entire list so that we can go through all the entire stuff. Like, well, honestly, we still have time. The council's gonna recommend something, but if there's things within the operational budget, send them to us. We will go through them and get the detail and provide either answers or say, yes, we can take $5,000 or $1,000 or $10,000 off, right? We're always looking for that because we can go back to our budget managers and say, what are you talking about here? What does that really mean? What are you looking at? What are you doing?
Here's the way I'm looking at it right now. I appreciate, Vicky, what you did, because I think it's needed from a taxpayer standpoint. It's a valid discussion. But in the last 4 years that we've been involved, or that I've been involved with council, we've actually had, and I don't want to quote the number, but every year there's always like, okay, there was a surplus because, and it'd be XYZ, you know, we didn't fill an FTE, or we didn't have this, or we didn't have that. And this, I think, is the first full year where we get to see drilled in information, right? And at the end of the day, if we save a little bit of money, are we gonna, and we reduce it from 4.1 to 4.0, is it gonna make a huge difference? And I'm gonna say no, at a very high level. It's not gonna make a difference. What is gonna make a difference is at the end of the year when we get to see all the detail and the drilled in detail, and then compare it to next year's cap or next year's budget and all that kind of stuff. I think that's where we can start to like, I'd rather have staff do what they've laid out and then find efficiencies based on, you know, the budget wasn't at 12,000, it was at 12,500, but it actually ended up being $7,986, right? I don't know.
And Jeannie, that's a very valid point. When I first got here, you know, we go through a budget cycle and staff were very, very optimistic of what they could achieve. And then they would re-budget for it and then budget for new stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And so, after 2 budget cycles, I was saying, look, we've got to put the realistic lens on this to say, what can you achieve and what can't you achieve? Because there's no point, you know, we were having big surpluses and it just didn't make sense to me. Because, you know, through my entire career, we've always targeted to be $100,000 or less is a good target number, right? That should be where you should be at the end of the year. Because, yeah, there's going to be some things that don't get done. There's going to be job positions that don't get filled. So you're always going to have a little bit of cushion, but you should be as close to zero as you possibly can. And so that's been our struggle, that's been our process methodically to get to this point where we can get driving into the details so we can understand that with a new software system so we can get those numbers as close as possible. And so we're getting there. You know, it's still going to take some time. Can we always cut things? And, you know, training's a great one. Can we always cut training by 50%? Yeah, we could. It just means that somewhere along the line, we're going to be catching up with certifications again. Somewhere along the line, we might lose some valuable employees that say, hey, you're not paying for my qualifications anymore, I'm going to go somewhere else. And those are the consequences we pay. But, you know, we are trying to retain people, we're trying to grow the organization, we're trying to be sophisticated, we're trying to have as much subject matter experts as we generalists that are subject matter experts to a degree in things so that we can retain them and so that we can be as efficient as we possibly can. This is the first year since I've been here that we've had any significant FTE count. And it's all because of the aquatics. And it's directly pointed to, right? I've been with watched organizations where every year we're hiring 5 new people, 5 new people, 5 new people with no real justification behind it. So staff we have some tense conversations because I test them, right? Why? Why do you need that? Tell me why, what's the purpose? And so, because I know what the questions are gonna come from council, right? And so, but I welcome that list in detail so that I can go through it and we can at least take a look.
The problem I've had is when I looked at what was online with the 2024 up to October budget, a lot of surpluses,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
which is, they can end up going to reserves, but it's not a good way to build a reserve.
No.
It's kind of, you're overbilling,
Yeah.
is what you're
It's
doing.
overtaxation.
Yeah, and so if you're gonna put a reserve in, do what we did this time, plan on a reserve. But get that budget to the bone so you can get it as close as
100%.
possible. And that's where I don't wanna see us at the end of the year, is with a lot in surplus.
Well, and the other piece too is we're changing some philosophies here since I've been here. Like we've changed some philosophies where, you know, when I first got here, it was kind of just this bucket of money, everything, utilities and everything, all in one bucket of money. I hate to use that word, and then doing your best to kind of allocate it. And so we started splitting out the utilities very, very specifically, right? And so and getting to that framework. And so, you know, we're there now. We're adding solid waste into that framework now too, so that we really have four businesses now, right? If you want to use that term, or 4 business units. And then general's got multiple business units in it, like fire and recreation and police and all those types of things that, you know, aren't, like police and fire don't generate a lot of revenue.
I think it would be helpful for the community, like when I was going through this, fire is sprinkled all over the budget. And a complete compilation of what we're paying for fire, I think would help people, because that's a service they value, rightly. But we need to have a complete total of what it's costing.
I think that's why this new GL structure is gonna be so valuable, is because we can slice and dice this data to such an extent, it's exactly what you're looking for there.
I was shocked when I went through and saw all of the different categories for fire and the expense that is costing.
Like fire is expensive and they want to grow even more, right? And you know, the summary sheet is a good summary aspect of things to show you what fire actually costs, what emergency management costs, what policing costs, what bylaw costs. You know, that's a great summary sheet, so you can see the trends from year to dates from 2021 all the way to 2025 and the preferred budget. And so you don't get into the detail per se on what training costs or what each individual piece of equipment costs, but it's a great summary for the community. What we want to try and build too is that on the average property, here's your tax bill and here's how much you spend out of your taxes on fire.
Different items.
Yeah, right. Because right now between protective services and recreation, that's close to 50% of your tax bill.
Well, I'm sure.
Right? So, if not more, and so that's not including utilities. So we're going to have that kind of public education piece, and we're working with communications to develop those sorts of things when we get closer to the tax bills. Kent wanted to say something.
Councilor McGonigal, as a budget manager myself, I know that myself and my other budget manager peers within our organization, it's not just a once a year thing. This is a constantly ongoing process for us. Last year, I want to suggest that through 2 software vendors that we have to deal with, we were shocked, surprised to be hit with a 35% increase in year-to-year software that we would have. If we didn't find other options, we would have had to pay. So we're constantly looking for ways to reduce costs within our own divisions. And you know, I know that these 2 software increases alone would cost the town roughly $200,000 over 3 years. So I mean, that's probably a small savings, but I know that we're all going through it, and we're all managing and monitoring what we're doing to be good stewards of public funding, of our ratepayer funds. So sometimes we're at the mercy of external pressure And there are certain things within what you would see in one of the briefing notes for the Fire and Protective Services vehicle refresh. If we don't do this now, we could actually see a 70% increase in the next quarter alone due to market pressures and the absence, what's the word I'm looking for here? The scarcity of processors and memory, et cetera, et cetera. So there's like market forces come to bear just the same way they would on a public organization or a private organization. And we're feeling that squish too, but it's a year-long process, right? So
I hear totally what you're saying. Extrapolate what we're doing out to a household, they're doing it as well. When you run your household, you don't buy beef as much. You just don't, cost as much. Everybody is experiencing, they're experiencing it at the household level, we're experiencing it here. And for some households, you got 4 kids, $32 a month is a bit. That's all I'm saying.
It's a lot of chicken now.
Pardon?
It's a lot of chicken now. Need a lot of chicken.
Chicken's going up 20%. Hate to tell you, Craig. But
No two for me yet.
I do wanna say something, for the past 4 years and comparing it to this year, I appreciate not only what Jordan and Michelle have done to put this together with the new software, but the entire team. I think it's been probably a big process for everybody to jump into, especially at the end of a year, creating a budget, all that kind of stuff. One thing I would like to say is, in the event that I would like to see this process, however it's a 4-day process, whatever it is, this has been the smoothest and the most educational and the most informative for a counselor to actually participate in. And I'm only one of 7, but thank you, because this, whatever you guys, everybody has put together, it needs to stay. And if I've got to pass a law to keep it in, let's do it, because if I can understand it, I mean, there's some complexity there, so can the community, right? It's not a shell game, right? It's
That's the ultimate goal, is to get finance so it's in an understandable format for the public to know where the dollars are being spent, right?
Well, even counselors, right? Like, I was gonna say, the first budget I did, not only because I was new, but also was, what the heck did you just give me? And this just makes a lot more sense, and we can ask questions and get answers, and not just, I have to get back to it, I have to go back to it.
I mean, ask you, did I have a blank stare on my face? I know the first year for sure, I was like, what did I just do, right?
The first year, that was, that 2022 budget was it was a little bit of a nightmare putting it all together and trying to convince our finance team on the information to be shared, right? Trying to convince the detail that I wanted to see conveyed to council, even if we're not gonna go through it, just so that it's there. So if you asked a question about recreation, or you asked a question about the
answer.
We could go to that page, go to tab whatever. It was paper at that time, so we killed a lot of trees. Right? But it's about being that, like I say, no secrets, no surprises. Here it is, right?
Yeah.
And
So, no. So at the end of the day, is council okay with giving direction to Jordan, Chris, and Michelle to finalize this budget at the 3.9 with all the changes we've given them today? Direction.
Whatever that number shakes out at, like with the 2,
Yeah,
fine
I'm
with
okay
that.
with it.
I'm good with that.
3.9 is, if that's the best we can do, try better.
Biggie ones are better, and that would be ideal if we could, you always want it to be lower, but in order for us to provide the services and the service level and the amenities and everything we got, that's kind of where we seem to have landed, is at that 3.9. So that's the direction we'll give you guys, and finalize it, bring it back for approval.
Okay.
Craig, can I just ask a question for future budgets? Not even ask a question, don't wanna debate it, just wanna plant a seed. I found it really interesting, Chestermere does their capital budget, I might not explain this very well. They don't show numbers, they have ranges, like $1 sign is $1 to 25,000, again, just making these numbers up. $2 is 25,000 to 100,000. And the benefit I see of that is, let's take the Crescent water main replacement. Everybody in the world knows we have $2.3 million. So does that put us in a better competitive rate when we go out to RFPs by saying, okay, their range is 2.2 to 3 million or 2.5 million, rather than put your money right on your money right on the table for everyone to know. So they're okay, let's do 2.999 because but it might only cost me 2.5. But because I know that money's on the table,
But you gotta remember, you're competing with other contractors
Yeah.
that might not be doing the same thing. They might be,
100%,
they might not be
100%.
having, and you're gonna lose it
Yeah,
if you
and
screw
I
around
just
too
thought it was
much,
a
right?
really interesting way to look at it, and I don't know, I don't know if this is the first year they've done it or not, but, I just thought for future conversation, maybe it was something to look at or see if they think they saw some benefits, but.
I've seen capital budgets where they don't put a number in too, right? And part of that, and that's a long time ago, and the reason was that proprietary approach of what the design actually was to have fairness. But at the end of the day, with all the trade agreements and everything that we have, there's standard rate cards that they all use now for capital projects. That, you know, having a number, our estimate, and it's a Class D estimate, you gotta remember that,
Yeah.
so it's on the high side. And so that Class D estimate is a good, here's the top of the mark, and if it goes above the top of the mark, all of them are over that, then we have to go back and reassess, and see what happens. And so, you know, we could certainly take a look at that, Kathy. I think it's, you know, I think that there's some value to it, but we'd have to see, you know, Riley, you've done more tender procurement in Alberta than I have, so.
You will occasionally see a low effort bid that is basically your budget. But to Craig's point, there's multiple bidders and
Yeah.
if they want the job, they generally sharpen their pencil because their competitor probably is sharpening their pencil.
Okay, fair enough. I just thought it was interesting.
We good?
So the recommendation coming from here is finalize it. If you send me those details, I'm gonna make you type some stuff. We'll take a look at those and target no more than 3.9. If we can get it lower, we'll do what we can.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Beautiful. Meeting adjourned, 12:15.